My friend says caffeine's a drug. I said, oh, tell your friend, fuck you.
I don't want to be your buddy, but just want a little breakfast.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to episode 7 of Breakfast Punx podcast. This is a podcast about coffee, donuts, DIY punk and pretty much anything else we want. Brought to you by Sham City Roasters and Deadbeat Donuts. From Hastings, I'm Dave.
And I'm Siobhan.
And on this episode, we're going to be playing a game that we've called Alldayer Dictator.
You've called it that. It's amazing.
Where we pick our dream festival lineup. And we're also going to review the film Mission of Justice.
It's a spanker. Is it a spanker? I don't know what a spanker would be.
I don't think there's such a thing.
Well, if there is or isn't, Mission of Justice is a spanker, if anyone wanted to know.
Very good.
We'll find out what that means later.
We're both a bit doped up this episode, so apologies in advance. Why are you doped up?
I had my second vaccine yesterday, and I must say, I do feel a little bit squiffy today, but that's fine, no more than I imagine a normal vaccine would make you feel. Just feel a little bit, ugh, but that is what it is. At least I ain't got COVID, so that's nice. And David?
I've had a shit ton of gout medication.
David's off his tits on Coldchene, or whatever it's called.
Mixed with naproxen.
Oh, God.
It's a real good one. So this could go a bit spacey, this episode.
Yeah, apologies in advance. We also have the cat right next to the microphone, so if she decides to do anything, then, yeah. Anyway, we'll see how this goes. Woohoo!
It's going to be a disaster.
It already is. This week, our vegan treats that we are eating, we got from our local bakery, Judge's Bakery in the old town of Hastings. We probably should have mentioned them ages ago because this bakery are amazing. They've been supplying me with flour and sugar for this whole lockdown period, this one and the last lockdown. And without them, I probably wouldn't have been able to do any of my business, seeing as the first lockdown, everyone bought flour and yeast and completely screwed over anyone who has a business that uses those items. So Judges were amazing and still are amazing in supplying all that. So we went down to Judges, got some of their vegan sausage rolls that they make, which are banging, and they're massive, and that was a lovely treat. And also they've got loads of other vegan products there. So we got some vegan cheese from Follow Your Heart, we got some Karma Cola, got these Love Raw, like Kinder Buenos things.
Yeah, we ate them very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's all demolished. I have nothing to show for it now. But I have taken a nice picture. I'll put that up on our Instagram. So if you're in Hastings, pop along to Judges to get all your bits and pieces. They're very nice in there.
Very, very good.
And Dave, what coffee are we drinking?
This week we're drinking a Peruvian coffee that's roasted by Quarter Horse Coffee Roasters. They're an independent coffee roaster and cafe that's in Birmingham. I've absolutely no idea how I stumbled across them, but at some point on my internet adventures I just happened to stumble across them and I thought I'll give them a go. Peruvian coffee is always quite a subtle taste, and they've managed to pull out a lot of the flavour from the bean, and it's a really nice coffee. It's very, very smooth. So check out Quarter Horse Coffee.
Delicious. So let's start with our first song. This song is from a band called Fresh. The song is called Girl Clout. They're a band from London. This song was released online in March, just gone. Well, this is literally just March. It's just come out. You can get it on Bandcamp. They're a great band. The last time they played Hastings, which was the last What's It Called Fest, nearly a year and a half ago now, they went down really well. And yeah, we really like them. Twinkly Fun Times.
Yeah, we'll have to get them back soon.
Indeedly. So this is Fresh with Girl Clout.
You don't even know me, you just want to look good. I feel the anger slowly, I'd kill you if I could. I feel a constant lethargy, the pressure to say yes. No one will take me seriously.
this Thursday.
Breaking news is part of this job.
You are fake news.
This is what's happening in your world tonight.
It's a fucking news.
So welcome back to the section that we like to call the news, but is really just any thoughts that we've had over the last 2 weeks. I'm going to start off with something that is pretty much a news story, and it's about Toxic What's It, who are the collective that I am a part of, who put on the What's It Cool Fest. I'm sure most of you know about us. That sounded very big-headed. We've got a bunch. So as I think I've said on this podcast before, since lockdown started, we kind of branched out a little bit from just putting gigs on, and we've kind of become a record label. And we've had a few releases, some of which I'm a bit late to the draw on, one of which I should definitely have talked about last episode, but I forgot. And that is a cassette by Electric Press, who were a band who we played, I think, 2 episodes ago.
Oh, yeah.
And their album Ragwalk came out online just after we played that song. Yeah. We picked up and we've released a cassette version of it. It's almost sold out.
I was about to say, there's only about 5 left.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So if you want it, get on it.
Tis wonderful.
It is. We've also got the new Corrupt Vision album, which is called These Hands of Mine.
Did we play them on our very first show?
We played them on our first episode, yes. So this is they're all part of the Breakfast Punx family.
Hey. Maybe we should start a record label. No, we're incapable of doing a podcast. Why should we
I'm
do
incapable
that?
of getting thoughts out at the moment, to be honest.
It's all good. It's all good.
That's a pre-order. There's a t-shirt to go along with it, but again, you can pick that up. All of these are available from toxicwhatsit.co.uk. I think we've still got a couple of copies of the Haste Audiotrope live session cassette, which I won't go on about too much, but it is a beautiful pink cassette.
He's a wonderfully pink.
So,
very nice pink, that.
And on top of that, we've released some mugs.
Oh, I saw them, Antifa mugs.
Yeah.
They're nice.
Buy a mug. But if you're interested in any of that, head over to toxicwhatsit.co.uk. There's loads of stuff in the distro too, so have a nice fill your bag.
Fill your bag, fill your cart. Speaking of filling your cart, Deadbeat Donuts, my little donut adventure. We've got merch, we've got t-shirts and baseball t-shirts, and also a long-awaited collaboration between Deadbeat Donuts and Sham City Roasters, i.e. me and Dave sat opposite me. Why we'd never done a coffee collaboration before, I don't know, but we're doing it now.
Yeah.
So everything's on pre-order. You can find a link to my shop either on the Instagram page at Deadbeat Donuts on Instagram, or www.deadbeatdonuts.com. There's a link to the shop on there.
There's also a link to all of that through the Breakfast Punx podcast Linktree.
There you go. Look at us. All the links. So, however you want to get there, go there and have a look and see if you fancy a t-shirt or anything. That pre-order is going to be on for the next probably week and a half, 2 weeks from now, and my aim is to get things sent out by the end of April. Yeah.
The coffee is a blend, a donut shop blend.
Yes.
Donut shop blend means basically something that's very easy to drink.
Extraordinarily drinkable.
And
have with your sugar. Have with your sugary treats of donuts.
Yeah. And it's a blend between Brazilian and Ethiopian. And it's very delicious.
It is delicious. Get on it.
My next bit of news is some book news. The band The Lunachicks are going to be releasing a biography called Fallopian Rhapsody in June.
That's an amazing name.
That's a good name, isn't it? The Lunachicks were a sort of 80s and 90s all-girl punk band who I really liked, and they were from New York City. I imagine their story is going to be very interesting, so I'm really looking forward to getting hold of that. It's written by 3 members of the band, and it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a coffee table book. It's got a lot of photos and flyers and illustrations and stuff. And sort of on that note, but not really, because a very different band in some ways, but somewhat connected. I also read the newish Bad Religion book, which is called Do What You Want. It's co-written with this guy called Jim Ruland, who co-wrote Keith Morris's autobiography. I didn't hold up much hope for it because I found the Keith Morris one. I felt like he basically managed to take someone's life that had obviously been really interesting and make it sound really boring by just concentrating on cold hard facts and not really. He does this thing in his style of writing where he mentions something interesting that happened, but then doesn't actually tell you about it. He just says, and then one of them, vanished for 3 months. and then just starts talking again about how then they played a gig, and it's just like, well, what happened in 3
Moving
months?
on.
But the weird thing about that is that really suits Bad Religion, because they are quite boring. So actually, just a list of facts about a band in order is pretty much what you want from a Bad Religion autobiography.
Nice.
Or biography. So yeah, it was pretty good. I would recommend it.
Nice.
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend the Keith Morris one unless you're a really big Keith Morris fan.
Oh. Well, this wasn't going to be my news bit, but I also read a book. It's nothing to do with DIY punk, but I encourage everyone to go read it. If you want facts, it's not really full of facts. If you wanted the stories behind and the weird emotions, this book's for you.
She should have employed Jim Rowland. He could have got.
She wrote this herself.
Yeah. She could have.
Anyway, I haven't told you who it is. It is Tracy Lords, and the book is called Underneath It All. It's old. The only reason I bought it recently is because I follow her on Instagram and she was replugging her book. For those who don't know, Tracy Lords is an actress who had a weird start in life in as much as she was in underage porn.
She was underage in porn.
Oh, so, yeah.
I think that's
sorry, we should probably be more
important-
clear.
yeah.
She got into porn films when she was 15, lied about her age. She had a really weird, as you can imagine, a weird childhood that led to that sort of life. But by the age of 19, or I think it's 19 or 20, she ends up being Crybaby, the John Waters film, which is where I first
She's
saw
still
her.
only 20 then.
She's still only about 20.
Bloody hell.
Maybe 19, I think she is, when she's in Crybaby, which is an amazing film. If you haven't seen it already, you've got to go watch it, because it's bloody brilliant. It's like a musical. There's loads
yeah.
of songs in it. Johnny Depp's in it. I think he's the main actor. I don't
Iggy
think there's
Pop's in a bath.
Iggy Pop is the dad, yeah. So there's loads of good things about it. Tracy Lords is actually really good in it. She's got this really iconic look and says "beat it, creep," and that gets used quite a lot in various illustrations. Anyway, it's a well good book. My main reason that I liked it is because she wrote the whole thing, and you can just tell it's just her babbling, trying to do it in this ridiculously elaborate, thought out way. All these like, what was I thinking? Did I think this? I just needed to get away. At times when she was like 14, and I can only imagine 14-year-old girls doing, I've been a 14-year-old girl. I don't believe that I had these thoughts in the way that
It doesn't mean poor old
she was
Tracy Lords
describing
didn't.
them. Well, I don't know, but either way, I think she tells her story really romantically and emotionally, and I think that's exactly what she was trying to do. So it is actually quite good.
It looks looks incredibly trashy. But
Oh,
in the
there's
best
so
possible
many
way.
photos of like all of her like modelling shoots of her in her bra and her in her shirt. Look at that. Ripped
They
jeans
can't
and her
see that.
boobs
This is a
out.
podcast.
She's having a nice time.
So whilst you were reading this this Tracy Lords book, I was attempting to read Woody Guthrie's autobiography,
Very
Bound for
similar
Glory.
stories.
And we were sitting on a couch, and all I could think of every time I looked over was how much better your book must have been than mine. 'Cause the Woody Guthrie autobiography, I think, is a piece of shit.
Piece of shit. Well, this autobiography is amazing.
So go Tracy Lords over Woody Guthrie every time.
Every time. Literally every moment in life you have those two options in your life. The nice thing about her book is she really does describe LA and Hollywood quite nicely. I'm really into the idea of waking up and having cocaine and cigarettes every morning. She did that when she was 15. That sounded very fun. But by 19 she was done with that and bored. So, it's that kind
The
of
life
book.
of the life of an underage porn actress.
It follows an interesting life.
Well, I'm going to go back to last week's episode for my last news story, which is about the film Psycho Gorman that we watched last week.
So good.
Which, if you haven't listened to the episode, suffice to say, it's a brilliant film and you should definitely watch it.
So good.
But there is, in the movie, it features a restaurant which is called Lester D's Real Diner. Real spelt like a film reel.
Oh, very
clever.
good, very good.
And apparently, it looks like it's a fake place, but it's actually a real place, which is in Ontario somewhere. And so, following the release of the film, they're going to do a hunky boy real meal deal, which looks like a McDonald's Happy Meal box, but it's all Psycho Gorman related.
Oh.
You get a free glass with either Psycho Gorman or someone called Pandora, who I can't say I necessarily recognise from the film, but she must be one of the aliens.
Yeah, she was the main baddie alien.
They've also released a really cool TV spot, like a trailer for this thing that looks like a sort of 80s or 90s
Advert.
TV advert for a crappy diner. So I'll put that on the YouTube. I'll put that on the YouTube playlist for this episode, and you should definitely watch it if not. The chances of anybody listening to this being in Ontario whilst this thing is happening is extremely unlikely. Although if you are there and you want to buy me one of these boxes, I will love you forever. But I think it looks as if you're a real super nerd, and I'm not going to confirm or deny whether I am this super nerd, it looks like you will be able to buy a few online from the Plastic Meatball website. I don't know what Plastic Meatball is. I presume it might be the company that made the film. But this thing looks fucking brilliant. So if nothing else, watch the TV spot because it's really good fun.
My last little news story is there's another podcast in town.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Our friend Betty, who runs Spread Eagle Tattoo in Hastings, she has started a podcast of her own. It's called Sophisticated Boom Boom. And I know, I love that. And if you've ever met Betty, if you're in Hastings, you'll know that she's just the nicest, sweetest person. And I could listen to her talk all day, and now we can.
For an hour
so.
or
For an hour. So each episode, I think the idea is that she will be playing different songs or different things that she likes. But I think it's based around music. And there'll be a theme to each episode. And this first episode, the theme is movies. She gets Ben on, who's her husband, who's one of the tattoo artists at Spread Eagle. And they discuss some of their favourite songs from movies and play bits of each song. And it's really cool.
Including Thrashing.
Oh,
and
Thrashing's so good. Yeah, no, I listened to it first and I ran through to Dave and was like, pretty much all your favourite films are in this. You've got to listen to it. So it's really worth a listen. So once you've listened to this, go give Sophisticated Boom Boom a listen. It's on Spotify. And yeah, it's brilliant.
Well, I'll tell you what else is extremely sophisticated, if I may.
Go on.
This week's episode of Norfolk News.
Boom, boom, boom. All right, my darlings. We got another bit of Norfolk news, and this week...
You got a guest this week, haven't
Well, I've got a guest. He's not happy, but he's here to tell his story. And I was first introduced to this young man's story by... I had 2 messages this week. Well, I had one and you had a message about the same story. My buddy Lisa, back in Brundle in Norfolk. I think she still lives in Brundle. I don't know. She messaged me to bring my attention to this story, and then Cat Swan from Plot 32 gave you a little tinkle on the interwebs.
They literally came through. I think it must have been on the telly that day or something, because I swear they came. You heard about it and I heard about it on the same day. And
there you go, isn't it? Well, this has taken the UK by storm, this story, so I might not be telling you lot anything new if you already are aware. So, postman plagued by Mr. Angry Pheasant on Roundin Brook. Brook being in Norfolk. A postman has told how he has had to run for cover on a village round after being repeatedly attacked by a pheasant. The male pheasant has taken a distinct dislike to Kevin Keeler. Poor Kev. I mean, we'll hear from him in a minute. He's upset. Has been flying
We've got
at
him
him.
on the line.
He's on the line. He's on the landline. He's on the dial-up. This pheasant's been flying at him, knocking letters from his hand and pecking at his ankles during his round in Brook near Norwich. I've seen a video of him on this round, and I think he's taken to wearing these red leggings to protect his ankles. That's how severe this abuse is.
I think he might just be a bit of an eccentric that's chosen to... He's heard he was going to be on telly.
I ain't too sure, because I think he looks upset. He looks upset, he looks distressed.
Kat, who sent me an email about this, is a post person.
Oh gosh, it must be in the postal news.
She does not. I don't know about that. She does not wear that outfit.
Well, she's not getting attacked by a pheasant on her own, is she?
No,
or is she?
I'm not. She
Kat,
didn't say she was.
You didn't seem distressed when you told us. He was very much laughing at him, I imagine. As we were maybe... No, we're not laughing at Mr. Keeler. This is serious. Mr. Keeler said he believed the pheasant, who was nicknamed Mr. Angry...
By him,
is
presumably.
just being very territorial. Yeah, he has nicknamed him. Well, Mr. Keeler, I feel awful for you. You try and do your job.
I think you need to let him tell his own story.
Let's let him.
He's becoming a big nuisance now because I see him most days. Certain part of the round, he's always there waiting for me. 2 weeks ago, he flew waist height at me and knocked all the letters out of my hand. So he's becoming a bit of a problem now. he sees me, he circles me, and then he makes a run for my ankles, dives at them, try and peck them. I don't want to hurt him, but I have to sort of kick him away a little bit. But he won't back off, and he ends up chasing me till I can get in the van, and I'm safe then.
I feel like he kicks that bird quite
I
a
don't
lot
want
and
to
quite
hurt him,
hard.
but I do have to kick him a bit. Oh gosh, I think Mr. Angry ain't going to be around for very long if Mr. Keeler have his way.
I have that man's kind of one-note delivery of that story. Makes me
Yeah.
think that he's probably Mr. Angry and he's just covering it up, to be honest.
That's excitement in Norfolk.
Is it?
Yeah, I talk far too. The southern influence of my voice has made me talk far faster
Is it?
than they do in Norfolk. It seems.
He does sound like he's about to fall asleep at any minute.
As all Norfolkians do.
He
That's
must
a
get up
quiet
early.
life.
He must get up early.
He's
They
knackered. He's
probably-
knackered. He's running from a pheasant all morning.
Not all morning.
Well, for as long as it takes to go up. It seems like he's only going up one drive to do that, so it ain't a big part of his morning, but it obviously does affect him emotionally. So, Mr. Keeler, wishing you the best of luck with your pheasant issues. Don't kick him too hard, because he is only a pheasant. Poor bugger.
I do think that this has made the national news. So
This came off BBC News this
I can't
week.
decide if that worries me. I haven't watched the news for probably a decade, and if this is all the news is now, this type of story, I'm in. I'm back in. I'm going to start
Well,
watching it again.
I must say, Norfolk News is looking up the kind of silly stories are re-entering the news forecast, and I'm excited about it.
What?
Well, this is my favourite thing about the Norfolk News, when it enters the mainstream and everyone else gets to hear about it. It's what we do it for. And it turns out that the BBC are now taking an interest and reporting on this pheasant. I must say, in upcoming weeks, for those who do live in Norfolk and do remember when the peregrines laid their eggs in the top of the castle, and there was footage, there was a live stream of it for months about a few years ago. Just a forewarning, the peregrines are back, and there will be eggs soon.
What a use
Keep
of the
an eye, keep and watch this space.
Don't watch that space.
Watch this Norfolk space. Anyway, that's
Do
it.
anything other than watch. Apart from read Woody Guthrie's Bound for Glory, do anything other than watch that fucking thing.
Oh well, that's that.
Let's move on to music, shall we?
Yes,
I think we've covered Norfolk. So next song we're going to play is by a band called In Evil Hour. They're from the northeast. This song has just come out on the newish TNS compilation, which is called Cheap Cans, Broken Vans and Basement Bar Bands. It's a brilliant compilation, and so we just wanted to play something off it just to give the compilation a shout out, really, more than anything else. It's got some really good stuff on it. But also, one of the discussions that I noticed happening a little bit when this compilation was released was about whether there was really any worth in putting compilations out in the modern day, in the context of obviously with Spotify and playlists and all that sort of stuff. And I have to admit, when I first saw the conversation online, I did think to myself, no, it's really not. I don't know why anybody bothers putting compilations out anymore. And then we got this thing, and we listened to it constant for about 3 weeks, and I thought, God, compilations are brilliant, aren't they? So yeah, that was my thoughts on it, really.
Yeah, bring back the love for compilations.
It's and I mean, it's not, normally in the past I would say like the reason that I really like compilations is more to sort of discover new bands and stuff. And I have to say, just like glancing at the list of bands, really, I think almost every single one of these bands, not only have I seen live, but I think we've probably played with at some point. Certainly the vast majority of them. But still, even despite that, it's a really nice thing to listen to. There's some new songs on there. There's some stuff that's obviously from upcoming albums. The Roughneck Riot song that's on there is absolutely fucking brilliant. The Faintest Idea song, I think, had actually already come out, but I think that's going to be out on their new album. That's absolutely fucking brilliant. The Bratakus song is fucking great. I hadn't heard that before because I've been slow on buying their album. There's just loads of really great songs on there, really. And this is one of them. And In Evil Hour, we've definitely seen them live, I think more than once. But I don't think I've ever actually listened to them on record. And I thought this song was fucking brilliant. So we're going to play it on this podcast. And it is called 2050.
welcome back to Breakfast Punx podcast. We're now going to move on to the main section of our podcast, which we have dubbed Alldayer Dictator, which is Dave's wonderful name for our Dream Festival lineup section. We were dreaming of all the festivals that were planned and haven't happened, and yeah.
And I think the fact that potentially it's worth maybe trying to get excited about going to gigs again.
Yeah.
So it seemed like an apt time to do something like this.
Yeah.
Even
no,
though none of these bands could possibly play for the most part.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
a few,
it's,
but
it
anyway.
is true. So there were some rules, loose rules to this. We picked 10 bands, starting with 2 openers, then 2 more bands, then 3 more bands, then 2 main support, and then a headliner.
That made sense when we described it before, but you talking about it then.
It makes sense in the scope of a poster. So we tried to start with generally the order of how it would go from openers to headliners.
Yeah.
And we divvied it up into sections to make it easier to write on a poster and easier to discuss. So let's see if we actually manage that. That was about where the rules ended for me. Dave added some extra rules to him because he found it a bit hard.
So yeah, I initially started this with loads and loads of bands. I think I stopped myself at about 30. And so I needed to find some way to break them down. So I did come up with a few random rules and also made a few decisions based on things like if I've already seen a band live or, you know, if it's potentially possible for me to ever see them again. Because I figured that, because the way we've done it is that we've picked the band, but we've also picked the era of that band.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, you could literally pick anybody. So that it almost seems pointless in that respect to be like, well, I really like, you know, this band who are kicking around at the moment.
Yeah,
who
they're still
who I'm going
going
to be able
now.
to go and see in a year's time. So there's a few decisions that were made on that. They weren't really rules. One rule that I did put in, which I'll get to because there was a few I think that this affected. I didn't allow the same person to be in more than one band.
Yeah.
So that helped me a bit because that way I could get rid of about 6. So that was really, I think that was the only main rule, to be honest.
Well,
actually, one of my choices wasn't even a band. So I decided I wouldn't allow myself that either. But we'll do some honourable mentions at the end so we can talk about that then.
I think also yours is more thematically probably a festival that could actually exist, like genre of musics wise, I would say.
I was really surprised
more so than mine.
Yeah, I was surprised by how much of mine, and maybe this makes perfect sense, but other than a couple, all of mine are bands that were at the time would have been between about 80, the very late 80s and the very early 90s.
So it could have happened.
Which does make a lot of sense, I suppose. And I think one of the reasons why that was, so one other thing about my list that I felt a little bit bothered about was that it's a fucking sausage fest. Totally.
Shit, so's mine.
But I initially thought to myself I should do something about that, because I mean I would do something about that if I was really putting on an all day. But then I thought, well, partly I'm not making excuses at all. I allowed myself it because I thought, well, this has to be a genuine thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm actually this is genuinely a band that I really want to see from this era. And so I thought I'm just going to do it purely on that and accept the fact that probably a lot of those decisions are based on me. By default, of course, you go back to being a teenager or the things that you've just missed out on, which seems to be, my list is very much full of bands that I missed out on by, 4 or 5 years, but would have found out about at the time. Yeah. And so I make no excuses for the fact that when I was a teenager, I didn't think about gender politics in music at all. Oh, I did a little bit maybe, but not, I wasn't. It was a different time, I suppose. Now that's totally an excuse. That's not even worth saying. But it was just, it is what it is, isn't it?
I guess it's not something to dwell on in the scope of our dream festivals from picking bands from the past.
Yeah,
at this point.
Yeah.
I also think something to be said, and you'll see it more from when we do reveal what our That's a big deal. When we do talk about what our lineups are, again, yours follows probably more what a festival actually would. Like, I think yours is accurate. Smaller bands leading to a bigger band. I do think it actually works. Well, there is, and again, mine doesn't. So please forgive my shit show of a festival.
But I mean, I think the current climate that we live in right now is that most bands who are from the 80s and very early 90s, if they did reform with original members, they probably would all headline a big festival. It's a lot of bands that reform who would have once played in pubs or whatever,
Yeah.
would now play. So I definitely looking at yours.
Yeah.
It's all of your bands if they actually reformed. Almost,
Would
I think
headline.
probably all of them. They'd all headline like Riot Fest.
Yeah.
They're that kind of band. And in fairness, I think a lot of them, even my slightly more obscure ones,
Yeah.
particularly if you could actually bring people back from the dead, which
Oh,
is
for
what
sure.
I've done quite a lot.
Oh yeah, I've got a few returners from the dead.
You know, if you can bring people back from the dead, or you can make people young again, then I mean, you know, loads of these bands people would kill themselves
Yeah.
to see live. You know, whereas they may not have been particularly big or sold a lot of records at the time, possibly.
Yeah.
We also had to pick a venue
Yes, we did.
for this Alldayer. We were going to name it, but we decided we couldn't come up with anything funny, so we're not going to name it. So we're just not going to do that.
No. Let's leave it.
I don't think I had any more rules than that.
No, and maybe we should talk about venues first, because I thought of the same venue as you, but I think we did it for different reasons. And I would say I'm a bit stuck between a couple. So I didn't really settle on one, but I think...
I had two. There's two that either one could have.
Yeah,
Could have
I've
gone
got
one
two, and I think there's one that's appropriate and one that is in no way appropriate, but would be nice if it existed.
Okay.
So, my one that I'm going with, which I think is the one you're going with, is London Astoria.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picking it purely because I only went there twice as a teenager, and then it's been closed down. But I don't have a lot of connection to it as such. I just remember it being really nice, a really good venue. I saw a couple of good bands there. I was a teenager travelling from Norwich to London to see it, so I remember it really well for just, I don't know, experiencing life
In the
outside
big
of
smoke.
Norwich.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
honestly, no one ever got out of Norwich when they were a kid. So it was really interesting and really exciting to go. I saw two fairly rubbish bands, but it was quite... It
Who
was
did you see there?
I saw Anti-Flag, which is
Oh,
fine.
that's not so bad.
They were supported by No Comply, and that was quite
Oh,
good.
no complaint, right?
Yeah, no, they were really good. And then Alexa's on Fire, and I'm ashamed.
That's not the worst thing.
I'm not
either.
ashamed, but I'm a little bit ashamed. No, I was a teenager, screw it, I don't care. I lusted after, God, what was his name? I've actually forgotten. Which is
Oh,
bad.
what, Dallas Green?
Oh, God. So when I was a kid, I thought he was the best thing ever.
I saw Dallas Green do an acoustic
Oh, I
set
wouldn't
once,
want to see that.
and it was fucking dreadful.
Yeah, no, he's painfully... oh, no, the acoustic stuff makes me cringe. Hella. But
I think he played for about 2.5 hours on his own, completely
Yeah.
on his own with just an acoustic guitar, and it was. He didn't have a support band.
Oh, God.
Oh, fuck me!
Well,
was it bad.
So I remember going to see them at the Astoria, but we got there at like midday with the pure...
Did you queue up
Yeah.
with the gods? Yeah.
I queued up outside with the few people that were already there just to get a glimpse of them. I got a little cuddle with Dallas Green, got a photo, but my camera went wrong, so it has to live in my memory only.
I tell you what, you were playing with fire back then with those
well-
bands. I mean, not Alexis on Fire specifically, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I loved Brand New, and look at them. So
I wouldn't want to be a teenage Brand New fan.
oh Christ, no. So I picked the Astoria overall, but my mention for where I would have liked to have gone, had any of these bands fitted in there and had it been appropriate, is the Ferry Boat in Norwich, which now doesn't exist and has now actually finally, 15 years after it was closed, we're getting on 15 years? Yeah, about 15 years. It's been closed now. It's now finally getting demolished this year.
Oh, that's just a sign of
Which is
horrible
really sad.
gentrification.
Well, no, when they closed it, they
Norfolk,
closed
Norwich.
it based on loads of noise complaints because it was right next to loads of houses that got built next to a pub. So, you know, fuck me, of course there's going to be noise. They didn't soundproof it, so they got shut down. Even though these very same people would dance on their balconies to George Michael when he played at the Norwich football stadium, which is also next door. But anyway, just depends.
Oh, wow, you sound very bitter about that
I
very,
am!
very specific incident.
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't a noise complaint. It's that they didn't like the noise that was
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, the George Michael and Elton John, when they played, were far louder than any of the punk bands that played in the Ferry Boat. Yeah, you know. So anyway, the Ferry Boat got
Did they
closed.
play together? Did they play Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me?
No, it was separate weeks, actually. I really like that song, so shut up. but anyway, so the Ferry Boat would have been my pick had it held more than 100 people.
I mean, I think, to some extent, because I made a similar decision based on size.
Yeah.
But I mean, mine aren't that small, but I kind of regret not picking the smaller one just because I think it would be mental to
What
see
was
some
your-
of these bands.
so your main one is
my
the
two options.
Astoria?
Basically, both of them are the venues that I saw most gigs at when I was
Yeah.
a teenager. So it's the Astoria is one of them,
Yeah.
and the other one is the Garage in Highbury.
Oh, that's
And
bigger
so
though.
it's bigger, but it's a lot smaller than the Astoria. It's probably
Yeah.
more the size, maybe the LA2, but I think it might even be slightly small. It might be a bit smaller than what the LA2 was. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I just saw both those two venues. So if basically all the punk bands that came through, all the American punk bands and touring punk bands who came through, if they weren't very well known, they play the Garage, and if they were very well known or a little bit well known, they play the Astoria, and then later on the LA2, which became the Mean Fiddler, which was like the smaller version of the Astoria, which was based next door. But yeah, I just saw some amazing gigs at the Astoria, and not all of them were particularly cool. I mean, I'd like to, I saw one of the really early things I saw there was Bad Religion and Snuff, so that's kind of cool. But I also saw the first gig that I ever went there, and I went with my dad and some of my school friends, was Terrorvision, Die Totenhosen, who were a German punk band, and a band called Baby Chaos that were like a sort of Brit rock band. I also saw like Ash there and Placebo.
These are good.
I mean, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you. I don't know how many times. I did see NoFX, Good Riddance, and the Vandals there.
These
That
are
was
all
one.
amazing. None of these are embarrassing.
No, it's true, but I'm sure there are some
Oh, it
embarrassing
turns out
ones.
I've seen loads of good things.
But the Garage is even better. The Garage, I saw No Use for a Name, Swingin' Utters, and the Suicide Machines on one bill.
one
at the
gig?
Garage, on like just a Tuesday night. It was about half full. I saw some crazy things in the Garage.
I was born the wrong time.
Yeah.
Oh well.
But yeah, so I was going between those two. In the Garage, I think we went there to see Martha a couple of years ago. When we went to see Martha, you're giving me a look. The podcast
Garage?
listeners can't see your look, but yeah, that was at the Garage.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
And we also went to a weird disco there.
Yeah, we did. We went to a ska
Like ska
night.
disco or something.
Yeah.
But that was early on. That was when we were young and fancy free. But but yeah, but I hadn't been there for a lot of years prior to that, and just going in because they stopped having punk gigs there definitely long time ago. Although there's been a few recently, but I hadn't been there for ages. And when we walked in, there was just something about the Garage. It's that weird thing.
You
It
had a
sort of
little
feels
quiver about you.
It feels like home a little bit.
Aww.
And I think the Astoria would, but the thing with the Astoria as well, one of the reasons why that means so much now is because they knocked the fucking thing down, and it was in a part of London which now is completely could not be any more different to what it was when I was a teenager. And so yeah, I used to do that shit where you'd go and you'd line up. Oh, I'll tell you who else I saw at the Astoria.
It had that nice alleyway where you waited.
Yeah,
Do you remember?
and you went round the side, and
So
then if
even
there was
though
a
it's-
long one, it went all the way round the back.
So
Yeah.
even though you're in the smack in the middle in Tottenham Court Road, you
Yeah.
wander down, you just go down that little alleyway, and that's where all the bands file in. That's where you wait all day.
And all the squares
it.
had to walk past you and like look at you like you were, because you were the dirty punks on the street
Yeah.
drinking a big bottle of White Lightning.
Waiting for Dallas Green.
Well, we had different childhoods.
I know. Right, well, we should probably move on to our choices.
I was going to say just very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you claim that I didn't see anyone bad at this story.
Okay.
I did see Korn there. So
They sing that awful song.
Korn supported by Incubus.
Oh, Incubus, bless.
Yeah.
But Korn, no.
I don't know what they sang.
Give the
I
dog
don't know.
a We're not going to go into
Sorry?
that. Give a dog a bone. But he does it really... Oh, anyway,
I
let's
don't
not.
think I ever listened to Korn apart from that one time when I actually had to go and see them. I went with my brother.
I came home one day and you were watching Korn live at Reading.
I was very drunk. I don't remember. And it was the Monsters of Rock Festival or
That's
something,
it.
wasn't it?
Oh, I don't fucking know. Anyway, we need to either cut this or move on. So, who wants to go first with the first two opening bands? Shall I go first?
Yeah.
Cool. So, again, mine's a bit of a mixture. These aren't necessarily typical opening bands. Who cares? It's just what you want.
It's
isn't
your
it?
festival.
It's
You're
my
the
festival.
dictator of this
Fuck
festival.
all of you.
You can make George Michael and Elton John go on first.
They are not featured in my lineup, may I just add. Okay, so, like I say, we're going 2 bands, 2 bands, 3 bands, 2 bands, and headliners. So, first 2 bands, opening acts. I've picked Minutemen and Oingo Boingo. They're very similar, obviously. So briefly, the reason I picked Minutemen is because I've literally only just started really listening to them, and now I look at their page. They're only around for about 5 years in the
Yeah, because
early
Dee Boon
80s.
died really early.
Because so it was Mike Watt and Dee Boon, and who's the drummer? I don't actually
Georgie.
know. Georgie. And D Boon passed away. I don't know how he passed away.
He was asleep in a tour van and an amp fell on him as they were driving around and
Fuck, that's
smushed
awful.
him. Yeah.
Oh, that is so awful.
It must have been more than one amp because he was a very big man.
Yeah, he was quite a
Yeah.
tubby one, wasn't he? But so Mike Watt and D Boon, they were childhood friends, weren't
Yeah.
they? They met when they were really young.
Yeah.
And I'd never really even knew who they were until we watched their documentary some years ago.
We Jam
Jam
at Econo.
Econo. Which is really nice. Obviously, it's not D Boon doesn't feature much in as much as he doesn't get to say a lot, but they do have a lot of footage of him talking, don't they?
Yeah, there's actually most of it's based on a really long interview that they must have done at the time.
Nice.
Because there's loads of that, isn't there? They're sitting in a park.
Yeah, but there's a lot of Mike Watt talking in the current time, and it features a bit of what he goes on to do. But it's just a really nice story about him talking about this childhood friendship that they had and how that led to them being in this band that was a bit weird for the time that they came out. Anyway, the reason that I've put them on here is because you've got that CD which is introducing the Minutemen, which is about 35 songs long.
It's a couple from every release, basically.
Yeah.
It's just a thing SST must have put out for like almost like a sampler of the Minutemen.
Yeah. I mean, think about a sampler being 35 songs on.
I mean, they're all 30 seconds. So
yeah, some of them are really short. But anyway, I've had it on in the car for at least a month, and I am nowhere close to wanting to turn it off. I just think it's one of the best things I've ever heard. And I can't, I love being in a position to hear these things now, having not listened to them then. And it means you get to keep refinding bands that everyone else seems to know about, but they're new to you. So they are on there because they're new to me, and I would love to have seen them. Yeah.
And a good opening band, just to like tailor it in with mine, because my opening band is, I picked them specifically because of this, is they would just, if people hadn't heard them, they would totally mess with their heads.
Yeah.
And like, there's lots of stories of the Minutemen like supporting Black Flag and coming out and basically playing like funky blues music.
Well, yeah,
and just like completely confusing all these sort of hardcore punk people.
But it's so cool because they're accepted in the punk world, but some of the songs are very like Bob Dylan storytelling. Some of their songs are really like frantic anti-Vietnam War spiels of him just screaming. Some of it is like the jazziest, funkiest, and I am not a fan of jazz or funk in any way, but Minutemen are the acceptable face of jazz and funk influenced whatever.
I think if you listen to them in the context of things like post-punk, because there was a lot of weird like funky punk music, most of it like Gang of Four and that sort of stuff,
and they would have been the same time.
And they would, I mean, I don't know whether they were necessarily influenced specifically by those bands or not, but they were definitely.
Yeah.
It definitely sort of makes sense in that context more than it makes sense in the context of American hardcore.
Yeah,
like there's nothing to compare them to Circle Jerks or something. There's no.
No, but they'd have been in the same. It's interesting that they'd have been supporting
mates,
each other.
like,
they'd have been mates. So Minutemen are my openers because I think that they're fucking awesome and yeah, impossible to see now because D Boon died in 1985. So, and then my other band that I'm opening with is Oingo Boingo. For those who haven't heard them already, you've got to go listen to them. You may have already unwittingly.
Everyone will have heard Weird Science.
Yeah, so you may have heard Weird Science, but also Oingo Boingo is a band pretty much mainly focused on Danny Elfman. Now, Danny Elfman wrote the music for many Tim Burton films. Is it all of them probably? The Simpsons theme tune is his work, and it's still working on film scores to this date. But in the late 70s, early 80s, they were in a band called Oingo Boingo with his weird brother.
No, the brother started the band and then he took him over or something. The brother's like he's a filmmaker.
He's a very weird filmmaker.
Yeah, they made a film together called Forbidden Planet.
Forbidden Zone,
yeah. Sorry. And that's weird as fuck and quite problematic
Richard
actually
Elfman.
to watch.
Yes.
To watch in today's, there's a lot of blackface and things like
that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was sort of in an ironic way, but again, it's not something.
Well, even their songs are a bit.
Yeah,
their early songs are very odd.
Their big song is him playing the role of a paedophile.
Yeah.
In a way that I suppose in 1979 it was kind of like, this is a funny joke. I'm being really hilarious.
Yeah.
It doesn't come across well.
We're not going to put that video on the playlist that goes with this episode.
We'll see what sort of mood I'm in when I'm putting it together.
But anyway, if you haven't listened to Oingo Boingo, don't let any of that put you off. Please,
you didn't do a good job.
Please go listen to them because they are the craziest, weirdest, amazing band. Nothing's really the same. They are influenced, I would say, heavily by another band that's on my list.
Yeah.
So well, I'll mention that when we mention them. But other than that other band, nothing sounds like Oingo Boingo.
And even that band doesn't really sound like
No, and it's just influence. So they're down as new wave, but they mix a bit of ska, they mix a bit of electronic music, it's very musical and orchestral.
Yeah.
And it's very just weird and wonderful. The way in which Danny Elfman sings is just strange. He's just a weirdo.
He started releasing new songs again. Actually on Epitaph Records.
Yeah.
And it might only be one song that he put out during lockdown. He recorded it.
Yeah.
And it's not the greatest song in the world, but it's weird as fuck. For a
It's
sort of
weird.
60-something-year-old man to just churn it out on his own in his living room. He's obviously still a bit of a odd sort of bird.
Oh yeah, I think it will be. So something to say about Oingo Boingo is Danny Elfman was losing his hearing. So Oingo Boingo haven't played in years and years and years because he hasn't wanted to. He's still carried on making music for film and for whatever, and recently he's done this song, which is the first in a while. But the reason they're on here is because I would love to see them. There's a really good cover band called Dead Man's Party that plays in South Los Angeles almost exclusively.
Yeah.
But again, unlikely
I
to see
think that
them.
might feature some members of Oingo Boingo, or sometimes it does, or something like that.
But so they're just a band that aren't possible to see now, really. And so I would love to have seen them at their time. So probably mid-80s, whenever Weird Science was out, whenever Just Another Day, which is their best song.
Then Dead Man's Party is
Dead
the
Man's
best album.
Party.
I think that was 85 or something.
Yeah, so that's when I would have seen them. So Minutemen, Oingo Boingo, they are opening
A good
Siobhan
start.
Fest or whatever I'm calling
they
it.
couldn't be any more different to mine. So, so my first one. Let's start with the opener because I really want the opener is very important in my Alldayer. The opener is going to be
Opener.
yeah,
Sorry.
literally. It's going to be, and talking about problematic, Jesus Christ, I'm going to have Gigi Allen and the Murder Junkies probably from 92 to 93. More or less the sort of era that they were making that movie that I think most people have seen called Hated, which I'm again, depending on what sort of mood I'm in, I might put on the playlist because I think
You should.
I think it's on YouTube.
People can choose to watch it or not.
Yeah, it's quite a cool documentary anyway. But to be honest, this is more for shock value than anything else. Every other band is really someone that I would genuinely like to see, and I had to be honest with myself and admit I would really have liked to have seen Gigi Allen live. Despite all of the various problematic aspects of his character and his music and everything else. I did actually go and see the Murder Junkies live when I was in New York about 5 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, about
6 years ago. And it was it was billed, and I think it has been their last ever tour. And his brother, Merle Allen, who, if you've seen the movie, he's the one with the Hitler moustache.
Yeah, he's not well. None of them are well people.
And the drummer, who is
The one that
extremely
never wears
unwell,
clothes and is a bit weird.
Yeah, and who exposed himself to children and had just got out of prison when they went on tour. He was also in them. I didn't realise. I have to admit, I think if I'd known he was still in them, I probably wouldn't have paid money and gone, actually. But I didn't know until they started playing, and so I thought by then the damage was done. But they had, unfortunately, of course, how do you tour the Murder Junkies without Gigi Allen? He's so if you don't know, Gigi Allen died in 93, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly. They definitely continued on pretty soon after that with presumably the same singer. I'm not sure. He looked quite young, the guy that I saw sing with them, and it's just like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If he's shitting his hand and threw it at you, you'd think, oh, he's trying too hard.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't shit in his hand and throw it at you, you think, well, this band's rubbish. These songs are awful.
Did he shit in his
No,
hand
he didn't
and
at
throw
all. He
you?
didn't do anything.
Okay.
He just kept his hood up.
No banana up the bum.
No, nothing. He didn't even say anything particularly.
But that's fine. I think you can't. I don't think you can.
I think they did the right thing, but I almost think the weird thing about that gig was that his brother. So I wanted to see the venue. So the venue was called something. I can't remember what it was called, but it was called something with fire in the thing, and it was in a weird part of Brooklyn that I'd never been to. And I thought this is going to be a weird rock bar with like bikers in it or something.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to get there early. I need to be drunk because I was on my own, and I was like, I'm going to see the fucking Murder Junkies. So I thought I'll get there early. I'll just get into this cool, presumably rock bar, and get on it. And I don't know what time I got there, but I don't think they played until about 11 o'clock, and I probably got there at about 6 or something. And it wasn't at all. It was just like a neighbourhood bar. It was a really strange place to see them. But the strange thing was, so I arrived, there was only about 6 or 7 other people in this bar, and his brother had this whole like merch table all set up for himself. He was selling all sorts of weird shit, just like loads of videos that were obviously just like dodgy sort of old videos of like that, you know, G.G. Allen playing and stuff. Loads of posters that he could sign. It was like a wrestler's thing. And then if you paid him $10 or something, you were allowed to get your picture taken with him.
Oh God, I wonder where that's going.
But it was so sad because for the first, I don't know, probably 4 hours that I was there,
No one went.
slowly but surely getting drunker and drunker, he was just sat there like a little sad man with a Hitler moustache, just waiting for people to come in. And then, in fairness, by the end of it, I think he probably did. But I mean, it's so fucking weird.
Why
to,
would
like,
you do it?
Sell your. I mean, he was obviously just making as much money as he could. But
Off his dead brother.
yeah, it was a very strange gig. Anyway,
Even without G.G. Allen. being
even without,
alive.
but for just completely different reasons.
Aw.
But yeah, I just thought it would be funny to have G.G. Allen start, like just get everybody there for all of the other bigger bands, and
Yeah.
then just send someone out to throw shit. At
I
them.
mean, he proclaimed himself. He wanted to be the most hated man. That was the idea. Wasn't it?
yeah,
The
he
most-
said a lot of
the
different
most-
things, but yeah.
The idea was to be the most outrageous and
I think he described it
horrible.
as rock and roll, but
Yeah,
in that way
but-
when the term rock and roll meant sex pest asshole, that's
shit
what
on
he meant.
you,
Yeah.
get your penis out.
Well, no, it didn't ever mean that. Really.
Oh, well, that's a nice opener.
Yeah, so they open, and then just to really skewer things, then the next band after G.G. Allen is Reviver.
Oh, who couldn't be more anti? Oh my god.
So I mean, I feel like they would probably have refused to play this.
We'll
bill, in
mop the
fairness.
stage in
And-
between.
But the reason for Reviver, and I'm again sorry, this is a long story, so I think my stories get quicker the further through the bill I get. But with Reviver, I would want to see them. I think it was in 2011. It might have been in 2012. And the reason very quickly was that Reviver was, I went to see him at the Brixton Windmill in whatever year it was, either 2011 or 2012. I couldn't work it out because weirdly, 2011 and 2012, Facebook, people didn't really use it.
Oh,
So now I'm
yeah.
used to, if I want to find out when a gig was, you just type in a
Go
couple of the
there.
bands and the venue, and immediately the event comes up. There's nothing for this. There was only a Flickr, some pictures on Flickr, yeah,
Still don't
without
know
an
what
E.
that is.
So old days, 2011, back in those crazy
The
old
heady
days.
old days.
So I couldn't work out the exact date that this was, but basically I had sort of not been to a gig for a long time, and I'd kind of lost touch with music, and I definitely lost touch with like the UK. Obviously, Reviver aren't from the UK, but I'd lost touch with the UK DIY scene a bit. I hadn't really been going to gigs. I went here and there, but the only thing that I did keep doing was I used to listen to Maximum Rock and Roll Radio, which is kind of a podcast really, but they just played songs. And I used to buy Maximum Rock and Roll, and that was probably it as far as I wasn't really actively doing anything much. And my friend Jed, who's the drummer in The Dead Anyways, had just moved. He lived in Hull for ages, and he'd just moved back to London. I don't know exactly how close that was to this gig, but in my head, he'd literally just arrived. And we were talking about starting another band, and so we went to this gig, and it was fucking amazing, partly because Reviver are obviously just a great band and brilliant, but also because the support bands was Caves and Bangers.
Oh my god.
And I think Sam Russo played an acoustic set as well. And it blew my mind because I walked into... The last time I'd probably been to a really small DIY punk show was maybe like 3 or 4 years before. And I was used to going to punk shows and there being 5 people there and, sort of standing around awkwardly and then clapping at the end of... Which I feel like was the DIY punk scene for most of the bands that I liked. That was how it was. And then to go to see this, where the Windmill was absolutely rammed with people, and like when Caves played, everyone knew every single word. And I'd never heard of them. I had no concept that there was that whole kind of like indie punk scene that had been obviously building at that point for a few years. It was completely my own ignorance. And so it totally reinvigorated me. And I think in a lot of ways then like sent me down then I was like, fuck, I've got to get back in a band. I've got to get to more of these gigs. And through Reviver, so the other band that could have gone in their place if it hadn't been for that experience was probably Iron Sheep, or maybe even the Smith Street Band. And all three of those, as far as those kind of anthemic indie punk bands, was kind of my way back in.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of led me down a path. I don't know what my life would have looked like if I hadn't gone to that gig. Like genuinely,
it
sounds a bit overly dramatic,
Oh,
but I
no,
think
it's not. It's
I think
nice.
there's some truth to it. So yeah, but also, ignoring that experience, Reviver are, I think, just one of the greatest bands around at the moment. And I think they're the only one who, on my list, who I could still see in the same form that they were in then. I think they've got a different bass player or something, but yeah, I just think they're a fucking brilliant band. And we've seen them live quite a lot. And actually, I have to say, I've seen them live a couple of times and they've been a bit not that great. But the few times that I've seen them when they've been good, they are fucking amazing.
Yeah. So my next two, I don't know which order to do them in, but I'll do them one at a time. So the next one I've got is Justice. They are not in any way
They're that squat punk band from the...
Oh, the squat punk band from France, yeah, of course. No. So...
Doesn't one of them shit in his hand and throw out the audience?
Oh, always shitting in his hand. No. So Justice are a French electro DJ duo. Not punk at all. But I've put them on there because I went to see them... Oh, God, I was at Reading Festival in 2008. So very uncool.
Wow. Were you following Dallas Green around?
No, but I think they might have been there. They were there that year or the year. Anyway, I was born of a shit time. 2008, I'm 19. So I'm going somewhere. And Reading Festival was where I went. So anyway, we were waiting for... I can't remember who else was going to be on that day. But Justice were on about 3 bands from the end. Not on the headline stage, somewhere else. And I did already know them. But when they played... I was quite off my face on MDMA, which may have influenced some things, but it was
does have a tendency to influence some things.
But it was just amazing. I mean, most people might think that going to watch a DJ set is not really the same as going to see live music, but Justice are just insane. I can't really explain how good they are. Their music is very kind of influenced by like heavier music. There's definitely like elements of like Metallica heavy riffs in their kind of the way that they put their music together, but it's like really heavy French electro, influenced by Daft Punk. And to be honest, Daft Punk I probably should have put on here in their place because Daft Punk just broke up. So if we're thinking of dream festivals and people you've never seen before, Daft Punk I've never got to see and never will. But this Justice set, if I could see it again, I would pay stupid amounts of money because it was just so, so good. Again, probably the MDMA had a lot to do with it, I don't know. But they're just... I'm not describing it very well. Justice is if you know them and if you like them, that's one thing. If you don't, then you're never going to agree with me on this. But their album Cross was the only one that was out at that time, so it's all they could play. But the songs on there are so heavy, so amazing. Danced my face off for about an hour and a half. It's ridiculously good. They did a song called 2 Minutes to Midnight where there's a pause in the song on the record, but they made this pause go on for 2 minutes with them just doing the peace sign, and they've got these massive crosses that were just lit up, and everyone was probably as high as me. Everyone was just like, what the fuck is going on? And they are very cool looking French boys in their little leather jackets and crosses. So anyway, and then after Justice, I'm putting Blondie, who probably should be headlining a festival. But in fairness, I think that they played fairly recently and they were definitely on in Daylight. And they played in Hyde Park, I think.
Yeah, but wasn't that at like a...
Oh, one of those horrible days.
Jules Holland's Presents.
I think Phil Collins was there.
Yeah. If it was Phil Collins above Blondie, it would have been.
I think so,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ.
It was bad. My mum went to it. She told me about it. I don't remember it. So anyway, Blondie, I have seen. We went to see them like 2018, 2017 at Brixton. And they were better than I thought they were going to be. But, given that they were at their best in like 78, 79, I wasn't expecting it to even be listenable. But it was good. Anyway, I would love to have seen Blondie at the time, which they were playing CBGBs when they were first coming out. Blondie had a big influence on me as a kid because my mum played Parallel Lines all the time. And I just thought Debbie Harry was the coolest. I still think she's one of the coolest people in the world.
So pre-proper pop. You're
pre-proper pop. However...
With some pop in it.
Yeah, because I really like Union City Blue as a song. But I'm willing to.
You're the
give
dictator.
That away.
You can pick the set list, even if they've not written it yet in the age that you're.
Yeah, I want to see. I want to
see
them like early days CBGBs, but I want them to have already released Union City Blue. But yeah, I love Blondie. I think they're a brilliant band. They weren't really punk, but they fell in that kind of group of bands that were happening at that time. And yeah, I just adore them. So Justice and Blondie are my next two bands. David, your next two bands.
My next two are a bit of a 90s fest, but then looking up, actually, the whole thing's
I
a
think
fucking
it is,
90s
isn't it?
fest.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not quite.
Your life is a 90s fest. Carry on.
That's incorrect. I just picked Reviver from 2011.
That's the
What are you
only... Anyway.
So, actually, I'm not sure this band potentially should have been earlier anyway, but so my next one is SNFU
Aww.
from the early to mid 90s. I would have probably picked a period that most people wouldn't have picked. I would have picked somewhere between 95 and 96, which is when they released the albums. The one voted most likely to succeed and Fayulaba. Don't know if that's how you say it. But those were my favourite albums. But I think by then most people would consider that was kind of the end of their really good run, because they'd released most of their best albums by then. But I never saw them at the time. SNFU are, I think, one of the best bands of their era. Definitely the best bands from that kind of whole Epitaph, Fat Records sort of era in the late 90s. Most interesting, I think Chai Pig is fucking amazing. I think I talked about them on the podcast not too long ago, so I won't go on about them too much. But we did see them at Grows Rock.
Yeah.
So if you don't know the story of SNFU, there's a really good movie about it called, I think it's called Open Up and Say Mr. Chai Pig. I think that's right. And I went to see them when that film came out, which was quite a while ago now, at least 10 years ago. And he had basically been on the skids for it must have only been 6 or 7 years or something. But he managed somehow, he was homeless and addicted to all sorts of things. And he managed to age, like, I swear, 30 years in the space of about 5.
Yeah.
Just through lifestyle alone, really. And he looked like a little old man by the time he came back. But I mean, he probably wasn't really that old. But the first time that I saw them was when they made a comeback, and it was a completely different band. So the main people in the band, there's 2 brothers, and then Chai Pig, and the 2 brothers had left the band by then. So it was a completely different band, and basically it was just really sad to watch. He was really not in a good way. He was really, really underweight. He missed. I don't think he got one line in the right place, let alone any note in the right place. He looked like he had to be led on stage. And when I watched it, it felt like they were really exploiting him in a way, and I felt really uncomfortable about it, and I hated every minute of it. And so after that, I thought to myself, this is really sad. I can't. SNFU were then touring, and they came through London a bunch of times, and I never went to see them because I just thought to myself, I can't give them any money. To be honest, because I think that what they're doing is horrible. But then randomly at Grows Rock, this was quite a while later, in fairness. This was probably
2016.
Yeah. So this was quite a long time later. We thought they were on, and I was like, let's just go and have a look at them. And he'd obviously pulled himself together, and he was fucking amazing.
He's wearing a lovely gold sequin dress.
Oh, he was.
He held your hand.
He did. He gave me a cuddle.
Yeah. And he was really well.
Yeah, but
as
he was well, and then he died about 2 years later.
Yeah.
But
he sounded good.
Yeah, and they were great, but it's not really about that. I wasn't like musically critiquing them. It just felt like he shouldn't have really been expected to do the thing that they were making him do.
Yeah.
But I guess they probably weren't making him do it. I guess he probably just really wanted to do it. But anyway, yeah. So I would have loved to have seen him more than the band in his prime.
Yeah.
And my other one for this section is the Jesus Lizard. From somewhere probably after they released their album Liar, which I think is 92, because the album before it, which is Goat, those 2 albums are just fucking perfect, and so I'd love to have seen them. And this one is purely, I've never seen Jesus Lizard live. They're famously one of the greatest, if not the greatest, live band of their era. There's loads of footage. I'll put some of that on the YouTube playlist as well. There's loads of footage of them playing live, and it's just fucking brilliant. If you've not heard the Jesus Lizard, it's basically 3 of the best musicians playing kind of noisy, punk-influenced rock music, really discordant, but really interesting, with this fucking drunken madman just like rolling around in the audience making noises. On record, the vocals are... I love his vocals. I don't mean to say that in a kind of unpleasant way, but on record you can really hear that there's a really interesting thing going on with the vocals actually, but live it's just a completely different thing. It's just like a wild man. And I would have just absolutely loved to have seen them. They did reform in 2009, and I'm not going to lie, I didn't really know them then. I've only been listening to them for the last 4 or 5 years probably, and I think they might have done a couple of things here and there. They played All Tomorrow's Parties not that long ago, so I hope that they play again. But yeah,
He's still a crazy little.
he's
Isn't
wonderful. He makes
David Yao?
Yeah,
Is that his
David
name?
Yao. He makes. He's in movies now.
Yeah.
He's a very interesting, very eccentric,
Wasn't he
very
making,
lovely man.
Wasn't he making art in the shape
Yeah.
of concrete blocks with things
Yeah,
in them?
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't do it now. I don't
No,
think.
he just did it for one. It was the release of something. So I think it
Yeah.
was. I think it was a book. He released a book of his artwork, which was
Yeah.
pictures of cats because he really likes cats.
Oh.
And if you bought the book, you got it in a concrete slab that he sent through the post. So he's fucking brilliant.
Aw.
But yeah, I mean, definitely check out any video you can of Jesus Lizard playing live. They're crazy good. And like I say, those two albums, Goat and Lie, are just perfect. All of their albums are brilliant, but those two.
Legends. Cool. So now we're going to do the bit where we talk 3 bands. So I'll quickly whiz through these because I appreciate we are going on a long time and we've talked about some of these bands before. So my next 3 are, in no particular order, The Cramps, Fugazi, and Depeche Mode. Because of
That
course
classic threesome.
they
right?
would
I can see them being on tour with each other.
They're that classic 3 bands that always get lumped together. I will quickly whiz through them. So, The Cramps, I, again, wish I'd known of them long time ago. Lux Interior passed away in the not too
Yeah, it's not
recent
that long ago, is it?
past, wasn't it?
Mm.
Poison Ivy's still going, but I don't know what she does musically now. I can't
She
claim
doesn't.
to...
I think once he died, she kind of just stepped away.
Because they were playing till quite...
Mm.
They were playing right up
until
until he died,
Yeah,
didn't they?
yeah.
So I can't claim to know much about the Cramps. There'll be people who, I mean, there's a huge following for them, so there'll be people that know tons. But just as a band who are so interesting, so weird, and so wonderful, oh my god, I would love to have seen them. We'll put a video on the playlist from when they played in a mental asylum in America to people who were like off their tits on old style
It's an old psychiatric hospital. There's people that you can
from the like late 70s, I should think.
But they had probably been there since the 60s. There's people with visible lobotomy scars.
Yeah,
and stuff. It's crazy.
And they're just playing.
But they're having the time of their life.
Yeah.
Though it's a nice video to watch. It's quite life affirming, but Jesus Christ, they don't look like they've been looked after very well.
But yeah, the Cramps are amazing, so interesting. Poison Ivy was an incredibly good guitarist of her time. Fugazi, again, I grew up at a time where I only loosely knew of Fugazi, I only loosely knew of Minor Threat, and I'm having the greatest time of my life in the last 5-6 years of actually rediscovering or discovering for the first time any of this music. Fugazi I was aware of as a kid, but just not aware of just how amazing they were until more recent years. There's a video, again, we'll put it on the playlist, of an early Fugazi gig, which I would love to have been at.
It was their first gig with Guy Picciotto, I think, because he's not even... He's like a dancer.
Exactly, he's
like
just flailing about on the stage and joining in the singing of this song from time to time. When they first played Waiting Room, or early days playing Waiting Room.
Everyone knows the words.
Everyone knows the words, yeah. And the whole audience just go insane. They're all so young and so energetic, and again, Dave's rule of not including bands from not including bands that had the same member in it. So basically, Minor Threat are amazing, but I would like to see Fugazi on my list.
I've seen Fugazi twice. Sorry, I'm just throwing
Oh, fuck off. And my last band is Depeche Mode, because I fucking adore Depeche Mode, and I have never seen them. I believe they are still pretty good now. Maybe not so much now. The last time they played that we were able to, could have gone and seen them, was when I first met Dave. It would have been 2013.
Yeah, we talked about going, didn't we?
And we were going to go.
In the staff room of the psychiatric ward that we were working on.
And we were like, should we go? And the tickets had long sold out. It was at the O2. And since then, they've not played, to my knowledge.
I think
they might have played once, and again, it might have sold out. But I've not seen that they've been playing. But the time I wanted to see them was we'll put a video on the playlist. There's a gig. They're really late on. It's probably 96, and Depeche Mode started in the early 80s, where they play "Never Let Me Down," and it's just amazing. I wish I could have been there. The whole audience is crazy. Dave Gahan is just such an incredible frontman. The guitarist, can't remember his name, sings beautiful backing melodies to his just noise, and I just adore them. I wish I could have seen them.
It's slightly before they all started to look like they had melted as well, isn't it?
He is a bit melty.
Yeah.
Dave Gahan's a little bit melty, but I think he's beautiful even now.
Yeah, but just weathered meat. Like.
Well, he's still not wearing a top. He's still wearing a leather
but that's
waistcoat.
That almost shows off. He's got the heroin.
He's got heroin
look,
physique,
That's
yeah.
the thing.
But
which is it's like, yeah. No, I'm not.
I don't know.
Judging
I'll
it,
put the video up. You can judge for yourself how beautiful he is. But I love Depeche Mode. I totally would have wanted to have seen them at that time. I probably, as much as I will definitely go and see them now if they ever play again, A, it's unlikely, B, it just won't be the same. So if I could see them, I would have seen them early, but I would have seen them that 96 era when they're a bit heroin looking, but they are beautiful and they're very good. So yeah, they're my three.
I feel like a Depeche Mode crowd would be a very boring crowd, and I know that video that you're talking about, they don't appear to be that boring, but
I think now
I just feel like it would be like going to see.
Well, that's
That's
an important point, really, and that's why picking an era of band, I'm also picking the audience to go with.
Yeah.
Because, for example, they're not in my list and they nearly made it, but purely because I don't think... I think they're amazing, but I don't know how exciting live they would have been. B-52s are one of my favourite bands. We went to see them a couple of years ago in Nottingham. Fuck me. We were the youngest in the audience by about 30 years.
Even me.
Even Dave. The people in front of us all had walking frames. Like, I'm not even kidding.
They shut the bar at 9 o'clock.
They shut the bar at 9.
I went out just after the B-52s came on to buy us a pint, and they'd shut all the bars.
The B-52s were asking people to move more because they just weren't moving. And I was like, oh, B-52s are a party band, but the audience really let it down. So anyway...
It was before we thought like this, but in hindsight, it was like Brexit on fucking legs.
Oh, it was just horrible.
Come to think of it. But anyway.
So that's another reason Depeche Mode want to see at the time, and if you saw them now, it'd be with it just wouldn't be a fun audience, I don't think. Personally, no offense if you are someone who would be in that audience. I just don't think it'd be as fun. So anyway...
Well, let's jump into one that would definitely have a fun audience, which we actually have proof of.
Your next
quite
three?
recently. So the first one of my next three is Gwar. I would pick them from the America Must Be Destroyed era, which is like 91, 92.
You need Dave Brock.
Yeah, partly because the singer's dead and I want to see them with the original singer, which I never did. We did see Gwar in LA about a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yes.
And it was absolutely fucking brilliant. And they're one of those bands that I always said from very, very young age that I definitely just always wanted to see Gwar. And they didn't really tour that much. They toured a bit more when I was like a teenager, and I for whatever reason, didn't go. And then for ages and ages, they didn't play in this country. And they've got a really massive... So if you're not seeing Gwar, I'm sure most people know who they are, but they've got this ridiculously over-the-top stage show that involves... covering the audience in goo and
they themselves wear like
prosthetic and stuff.
outfits.
There's a whole backstory where they're aliens from another planet and they've come to basically
enslave
everyone through their music and all this. Gwar, I think at some point we'll probably do a whole episode just about Gwar actually. So I won't go on about it too much, but this era, the America Must Be Destroyed era, it was just before, so they went pretty metal after a certain period. I mean, I'm not really sure how to describe their music. They kind of had a bit of a punk background. But also, I think during this time, I just love this album. It's really schlocky and silly, but I really love it. It was their best lineup. And so just to mention very quickly, when I said earlier about how one of the main bands that I removed from my list because I couldn't have the same person in two bands was a band called Capone. And Capone are like one of my favourite bands of all time. But the reason I removed them, they're completely different to Gwar, but the bass player from Gwar, the original bass player who played on this tour, is the main guy from Capone as well. And so I removed them. But I would have loved to have seen him as Gwar. So they have different characters that the person behind them kind of changed sometimes. And they had a woman called Sylvestra Hyman who used to like breathe fire and shit. So it was just the right era, I think, to see Gwar. And I would have just... I won't go on about them too much, but I'll definitely put some of that in the playlist. Yeah. On a slightly similar note, really, because I'd say as much as I do really like Gwar's music, I mostly pick that just because it would be an amazing live experience. And I've done the same for this other band. So the next one is the Butthole Surfers, but it would be quite early Butthole Surfers. I've picked 1987, which is the year that they released the album Locust Abortion Technician.
Oh my god.
But if anybody has heard of the Butthole Surfers, it would definitely be from their later period, because they signed a major label. So basically, post Nirvana, they got signed by a major label, and they had a couple of sort of almost hits. One being Pepper, which is like their famous song that probably was on MTV a lot in the 90s, and another one called Who Was in My Room Last Night, which is actually a great song.
And those videos are very early 90s MTV,
Very
aren't
90s,
they? That
yeah.
kind of like very colourful, cartoony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Butthole Surfers were another band that's all I knew about them. And I thought that stuff was all right. I didn't mind it. I didn't love it particularly. But they were just kind of a band who had a funny name, and I was sort of aware of them.
Butthole.
But what I didn't realise, and I think I was vaguely aware that they had sort of been around a bit longer and they had an independent career. But there's a brilliant book called Our Band Could Be Your Life, which actually, through both of our respective lists, almost all the bands in that book. It's a brilliant book. It's probably one of my favourite books ever written. But they have a chapter on all the different bands who's kind of bridged the gap between like the end of hardcore and the start, and like Nirvana, more or less, like that whole 80s period that everyone kind of ignored, which actually had some really interesting punk music in it. And the Butthole Surfers are one of those bands, and their story is insane. It's so worth. They were lunatics, complete lunatics. Basically, they formed in Texas, and they just got a bus at some point in about 82 or 83, and then just lived on the bus until the early 90s.
Aww.
And they did shitloads of acid,
They definitely
shitloads of mushrooms. They made some really interesting music. Their live shows were fucking insane. They involved fire, nudity, sex sometimes. They were just completely off the hook. All of them were completely nuts. And they just lived this life of almost like a travelling circus or something. And it's such an interesting story. There's a book all about them called Scatological Alchemy, which is a really good book as well, which just sort of tells their story. And they just live this crazy life. But their live show is insane. There's like I say, there's fire on stage. They've got 2 drummers, and so they're just like the power of there's some footage online of them playing, and like the power of those 2 drummers with just this fucking weird noise discordia stuff going on. It's just really interesting. So I would have just absolutely loved to have seen them live when they were at their maddest.
How many of them are alive now?
I think they're all alive.
Oh, well done.
In fact, they're definitely all alive.
Oh, good.
But not. I would say none of them have a full quotient of brain cells as they once did. They all look like.
Are they
casualties.
washing themselves?
No, they're still doing stuff every now and again. And like Gibby Haynes, who's like the one that you would recognise if you've ever seen Butthole Surfers, like the singer.
Yeah.
He's produced some like pop songs and stuff. He went on to have, and like the thing with the Butthole Surfers is all this really weird discordant noise. But there's a lot of tunes.
There's musicianship.
There's
behind
ideas
it.
in there that are really interesting as well. But that doesn't come across live. That comes across on some of the albums, but live it would just be this ridiculous experience, I think. And the last one, who I'll be quick about because I'm pretty sure you'll be talking about them too, is Bikini Kill, and I would have picked them from '93 because I think that's probably the perfect time to have seen them. There's a part of me that would have liked to have seen Bikini Kill without any context, to have been one of those sort of boys that went to a punk gig and found themselves in front of Bikini Kill for 30 minutes. There's a part of me that would have really liked to have had that experience, and then there's also a part of me that would have wanted to know all of the songs and just be able to like enjoy it. So, but I mean, they're just, it's kind of an obvious one. I think for me now, from this point onwards, they're all just like, my reason for wanting them is just, this is one of my favourite bands from my favourite era of that band.
Yeah.
There's not really any more to the story. I just fucking love Bikini Kill, and I think that they would have been so exciting live. We did see them when they reformed at Brixton Academy, and
2 years ago?
Yeah. And they were great. They were really brilliant, but we could only get seated tickets.
Yeah, it wasn't
and the sound was really weird, and it was all you could really hear is Kathleen Hanna's voice, which is fucking brilliant, of course. Like, it was brilliant to sit for an hour and just listen to that voice really loud, but I would have liked to have heard the whole band.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the best of experience. I'd definitely go to a better venue in a better.
Well, they were meant to have played. They'd set up a tour for this year just past. Obviously, everything got cancelled because of coronavirus, but that may get pushed forward. So they may even play this year or next year. They definitely had plans to. Well, now for my two main support bands. You've just named one,
thought-
Bikini Kill. I've talked about them before. Dave's just mentioned them. I've just put them so high up because I wish I'd have seen them. I wish I'd known of them. I've spoken about Kathleen Hanna loads of times on these podcasts. I wish I'd known of them long before. But again, the joy of discovering things now is that it's all new to me now, and I get to, music doesn't go away, it's still there. And yeah, they are still playing, but I would definitely love to have seen them, same as Dave, around that kind of 93 time. Just to have experienced them at a time where, I mean, what they're singing about then is still relevant now, but the arena in which they were singing it then, and the way in which they were, and they were so young, just, I don't know, I just would love to have been there. And I imagine my outlook on music and involvement would have been so different had I seen Bikini Kill, Kathleen Hanna, 93. I mean, I'd have been 4 years old,
I mean,
so
I
it'd
think
been
this-
different. But, like,
Yeah.
if there's any way of seeing them at that age when I was a teenager.
Yeah,
would have been
I mean, for me, it's like I almost could have. I just missed out on that. Really, I
Yeah.
mean, Bikini Killer are their biggest when I'm like 12.
Yeah.
But there is a part when I think about the sort of culture that I grew up in, and this is probably more of an English thing, but I think it was very much what they were rebelling against. But for me, teenage years wise, the mainstream, not what I was into, but the mainstream was like lad culture and like Britpop and all of that stuff. And if you think about, like, I mean, obviously, like Bikini Kill were mostly going up against the punk scene, which in comparison to fucking Liam Gallagher was extreme. It was nowhere near good enough, but it was, and I just sort of think to myself, God, I wonder how I would have dealt with the fact that my teenage years were spent around a bunch of people that were trying to be fucking Liam Gallagher. If I'd known about Bikini Kill, because I got into them early. I was about 17, and I had a lot of like positive influences through other people, through punk and stuff. But yeah, it would have been good to have heard Bikini Kill age 13.
Yeah.
I think it would have done me some favours.
Definitely.
And it would
I
have
think
done you some
everyone
favours.
should.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like,
Oh my God,
for completely different reasons, but
Just the idea, like, but the joy of hearing Bikini Kill now is, if I'd heard them then, I'd have started a band, and my teenage years would have been different, and I may have found a voice, and may have, but who knows? You can't speak for what you would have done.
Yeah, no,
but hearing them
there's no
now is really powerful, because there's loads of people that are hearing them now. There's loads of people that weren't old enough then that are now getting into them, and their influence is just the same. Because unfortunately, as much as things are better, there's some of what they talk about is as powerful now as it was then.
Oh, totally.
The idea of just doing it yourself, even if you haven't got a fucking clue, and not listening to people who say, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to play," is as important now as it's ever been. And especially to someone who, I'm 32, and fuck it, I've never played a guitar before. I'm gonna have a go.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Yeah, you still haven't mentioned it.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. But by the end of the year, music will have happened.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done that had I not listened to things like Bikini Kill. So even hearing it now, it still has the same effect that it probably would have had if I was a teenager.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, of course.
it's amazing.
That's the beauty of music, isn't it?
Beauty of music, beauty of Kathleen Hanna. Semi-linked to Kathleen Hanna. She would not like that introduction.
Well, no, linked is all right.
Yeah, linked is fine. And I just add, I would put Bikini Kill above this band, in case you're listening, Kathleen Hanna. But this band, in a particular set, feature at this point, and that's Beastie Boys. Again, not necessarily punk, although their origins were in punk, and some of their songs are still hardcore punk related. But I fucking love the Beastie Boys. Growing up as a kid, I was really weird and nerdy and learnt all their songs, so at any given moment I probably can sing every lyric from a few songs, but I'll do it really bad.
It's one of your least good qualities. But,
yeah, Dave hates it when we're not allowed to listen to Beastie Boys in the house.
Yeah,
I
that is
sing
so...
over them.
What a nonsense thing to say. Can you
fun.
imagine me trying to stop you
It's
from doing
fun
anything?
for no one but me. So I never got to see Beastie Boys live, and now MCA has passed away, so they're not the full lineup. He passed away about 4 or 5 years
And
ago.
they're not doing anything either, are they? The two of
No,
them?
they don't. They don't do anything without him. They played quite a lot up until his death. His death was quite sudden, although I think he had cancer for a while. But again, they played a lot up until his passing. But there's a particular tour from 1999 when the album that has Intergalactic had just come out. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Hello Nasty had just come out. And there's footage of it, we'll put it on the playlist, from them playing in Glasgow in 1999, and that gig just looks amazing, and I would love to have been there. I know some people that were there, and they've told me that it was amazing. And yeah, that's what I would have wanted to have seen. That time, those songs, they played everything that I would have wanted to have seen.
So I've never thought of this before. So I've seen the Beastie Boys once. And
You
I
didn't
just have
enjoy
two.
them,
Well, I
they
have
were-
two
they were-
thoughts.
they
I have
were,
two thoughts.
They weren't always very nice.
No, that's not. No, not that. I mean, I definitely had a. So I didn't. Thing is, again, probably being of an age where the type of. This is a terrible thing to say, but it is true. The type of people that I knew that were into the Beastie Boys were all fucking idiots.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I think that does kind of tarnish your opinion of them a little bit. But I will say I had two things. One, which I don't think I've ever said to you, and I've just realised something. So I saw them at Reading, and I think I must have seen them in '99. So I would have seen that set. That you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that was all. I just realised that.
Fuck you.
I know. But so they played on the same day as the Prodigy. And so Reading always had there was always a mixture of stuff, but I mean, I'm sure now it's just all shit. But they always used to have a sort of the metal day. It wasn't all metal, but they had the more metal bands on the last day. They had more kind of mainstreamy stuff on the middle day, and then they tended to have like an older thing, I think, generally. So like Paul Weller, or I think I saw Bob Dylan one year. But that year, the sort of more mainstreamy day was Beastie Boys and Prodigy, and obviously on those days. So on the metal day, loads of metalers showed up just for the day, and on the Prodigy and Beastie Boys fans that turned up fucking ruined the entire festival. There was like fights and like it was just horrible. It was a really horrible. I remember clearly just thinking, this is rubbish. And it was my first time, because back then going to a festival was always like, oh, this is like brilliant, like all the weirdos in one place kind of thing. And that was the one time that it was horrible, the whole experience. And so partly as a result of that, I always just kind of saw the Beastie Boys, as much as I did like their music, I genuinely did. Although I did always question a little bit, and I still do, and people miss this, is that they are kind of the Pat Boone of rap a little bit. They are definitely the band that white people are allowed to like. Like I know that they came from fairly genuine backgrounds and stuff, but there is an element that it was like, because I quite liked hip hop when I was younger, and it did always feel a little bit like all of my mates that liked Marilyn Manson were also allowed to like the Beastie Boys, but they would never have listened to. So I always kind of had bad feelings about them in some ways. Aww. But that's not because they was anything, because they were nice people, although they started off as...
They were troubled at the beginning, although they were 16.
And also they were being told to act in a certain way, and they were just doing it. So
and it was only it was that first album. Everything after the first album, they kind of improved their lives a bit.
But so I've always had a kind of a bit of a love-hate thing, really. But I did see them on that tour that you wish you'd seen.
Oh, well, I'm a love, and I wish I'd seen them, and I wish I'd been there, but I was 10 years old, so... Right,
my main supports... I don't know which one of these to do first, really.
Just do them. All
right. Well, here's a bit of a turn up for the books. I didn't expect a ska band to be in mine.
Oh, but what a ska band!
I know it doesn't really count. So one of mine will be Operation Ivy from I think 1988. Partly because I only picked that year because fairly recently some footage of them playing at Gilman Street appeared on the internet, and I watched it quite recently, so I just thought I'd pick that. It's not very good footage, but it looks fucking mental, because obviously it would be. And Operation Ivy, just absolutely love them. That I got that album that had like all of their stuff on it, the sort of discography thing. I got that when I was really quite young, and I did like Rancid back then as well. Kind of like Let's Go and Out Come the Wolves era Rancid I really liked at that time. But Operation Ivy was something else. They were just so special. And I just, their songs still, I think they resound. The lyrics are fucking incredible. Just everything. There's just something really special. It really, I don't know, I can't really describe it. It really like throws... And I think it was at a time in my life, I was young enough, that there was this kind of concept of this group of people in Berkeley and in California that I had no idea of what that meant geographically. I didn't even know it was near San Francisco, probably. Just... this sort of magical place filled with these magical people that I just wanted to be friends with and wanted to do all the stuff that they were doing. And I was in Orpington, sometimes going to Astoria. So
with your dad and school friends.
Well, no, I was a bit... Actually, probably wasn't that much later than that. And so and so now if I put that album on, I'm just immediately pulled back into that. Yeah, and so I just absolutely love them.
And also, they existed for a really short time.
Yeah, they did.
It's a real special kind of time in music that, everything after that is fine, but nothing's as good and nothing's the same as Operation Ivy.
I think that Jesse Michaels, the singer, has gone on to do some really interesting stuff. You can't. What can you do if you've been in Operation Ivy? Like, you're never going to top it.
They were
really.
so young.
Yeah.
Like, they're all under 20 years old at that time, aren't they?
Yeah, they're like teenagers.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's quite an interesting person. He's obviously very intelligent, but he's made some good stuff. Classics of Love is a really good band. And there was another one, I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, he's done some really good stuff. Obviously, like, I actually have quite a lot of respect for Tim Armstrong, to be honest. Rancid definitely went off the deep end. I think Life Won't Wait is embarrassing, and I think the album they released in 2000, the self-titled one, is really great, but pretty much everything else is like meh. But I think him as a person, I think he's probably pretty cool actually. And I mean, like, you hear stories of him now where he's just like, someone will go to a park somewhere and there's just Tim Armstrong sitting there busking and stuff. He obviously he constantly makes music. And I haven't followed it really. I did like his solo album, the Poet's Life one. I think that's a really good album. But yeah, I think he's probably a bit of a dude. It's probably not the coolest person to like, but I kind of dig him. I think he's cool.
So there's that documentary that we watched that's about Gilman Street and about everyone that came out of that, and I cannot remember what it's called.
Turn It Around.
That's it. And the bit that, because he's the young kid that's brought up in this world. And he seems right on the entire time. So yeah, I imagine he's probably, again, Rancid goes wherever they go and they become as popular as they do, but
yeah,
he seems alright.
And I mean, it's only Lars Fredriksson that's a knob.
Yeah. Is he a Millwall fan?
Oh, let's not.
No time being dedicated.
So let's stick with the positive. So my other main one, which definitely could have been the headliner, I think probably should have been the headliner, but I had no idea which way around to put my last two. Is Minor Threat from 1982. It's just, there's no reason. What can you say? I just fucking loved it. I mean, I ummed and ahed a bit because I could have picked Fugazi. Fugazi's probably my favourite. Actually, I don't know. Embrace, the band between Minor Threat and Fugazi, who just made one album. That album might be my favourite thing he ever did.
You told me that was your favourite thing that it, but Minor Threat when they first started.
Yeah, would have been way more exciting.
And he's 16?
No, he's a bit older
17?
than that, but yeah, he's young.
Yeah, his brother's in that one as well, is he? No, they were Teen Idols, that's it, I'm getting confused.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say really. I just would have loved to have seen Minor Threat in 1982. They're never going to reform. I can say with, I think 100% certainty that will never happen. And I wouldn't want, if they did, I wouldn't go and see them. I don't think, to be honest, I would have no interest in that whatsoever. It would only be if I could make them be 20 years old again, all four of them, and it would be the 4-piece, not the 5-piece, just to be nerdy about it. And make them play for me at the Astoria, which also isn't there. so let's not bother with the drum roll because I feel like we've gone on for about 3 hours. Who is your big headliner for Siobhan Fest 2021?
So my headliner for Siobhan Fest is actually, weirdly, of all the bands that are on here, is headlining a festival this year.
Oh, there you go.
But I want to see them from 1980 to 82, and that's Devo. Yeah. Devo are headlining Punk Rock Bowling this year, with I think Circle Jerk.
Circle Jerks are playing.
Yeah,
there's
a lot of. I mean, again, it's a funny old time. But anyway, I want to see Devo when. Now this is hard because I kind of want to see them maybe come out and do 3 different parts to their set and be part of it from 1978. Part of it from 1982 and then part of it from 1990 because I can't really decide.
But are they too old? But because surely that would have been their set in 1990. But would they be too old?
Yeah, but the thing is, when they first came out, they were so fucking weird. But they are so practiced because they've been together since 1970, maybe 2, and their first album comes out in 1978. And they don't even play a live show till about 1975. They just practice everything, including their dance moves in their
Actually, you can
like
see that.
garage.
Yeah.
For 3 years, they don't play to a single person. They don't record a thing. Well, they record some early things to themselves, but nothing proper's happening because they are fine tuning what they want to come out as, which is fucking weird. Then they all went to Kent State University, where there was a famous shooting of students, and it was all kind of awful. And that kind of like encouraged them to get a bit more like on it, and say, actually, we've got a message and let's make something proper. And yeah, so then they released that first album, I think 1978, 79 kind of time, which is weird. It includes the strangest version of I Can't Get No Satisfaction.
I love that version.
Oh, so good. And then Are We Not Men, which is one of the best songs ever. And then they go start playing this on telly in their weird yellow hazmat suits. And everyone's like, what the fuck are they? So I would love to have seen that, but Freedom of Choice, the album comes out in 1980, and it has my favourite songs ever on it. Whip It is on there, which is what most people knew them for, which is by far and away not their best song.
That's a banger, though.
It is a banger, but it's not their best by such a long way. But that album is amazing. And they're just strange and weird, and they're thrown onto TV, and they're these little nerdy boys getting asked things about a song that everyone thinks is about bondage and whipping, which it's really not. The song is meant to be a kind of take the piss out of cliches that office people say to each other, just like, yeah, do your job, you're so good. So they wrote this stupid song called Whip It, which is like, into shape, da da da, and it's just about like stupid corporate slang for doing a better job.
Did they consider themselves punk?
No.
Because there's a really interesting thing about Devo that I've seen a lot just pop up in things, is that everybody says in like 1980 and 1981, all the, like people like Black Flag and stuff, they say that the common insult to throw around at someone who looked like a punk was they would be called a Devo. And so they became synonymous with punk to the point where, like I was called a greaser or a rocker, and you were probably called a grunger or something.
Really?
It was like Devo was the equivalent of that at that time. I find that really interesting.
So they did end up playing, so they're from Ohio, but they ended up moving to LA for a bit, and because they did a stint in New York and they didn't really get on very well. Then they moved to LA, and they did ended up playing with loads of bands from that way that were punk, and they often not got on with them. They had loads of fights with. They did play with X, but the Dead Boys, they did not get on.
The Dead Boys are all junkies,
but
so I can imagine like science nerds and junkies. Not
they didn't get on at all, but they used to open for each other, and there would be fights, and there would be all this nonsense. And these boys like. Devo can't really fight, I'm sure, but anyway, they were at a time where they were being associated with these bands, but not for being anything similar, but just because they ended up being on the same bill with them a lot. Maybe even Screamers, which I think you might mention in your
maybe. Well, that's giving it away.
Sorry, darling. But so they played with some kind of LA punks around that time, but they were like not considered cool. And until people went to see them, because recorded, no one was really getting them, and then they were being seen live, and people were like, this is really weird. And it was an art project, really. It was like visual, they did films, they did loads of other stuff. So anyway, I'm going off the track a bit. I would like to have seen them when they first started. 1980s when they released Freedom of Choice, which is the best album. Then they released one in 81 and 82. 82 has a song called Peekaboo on it, so I want to see them then. And then by the 90s they released an album, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it's also really
Is
good.
it Noodle Maps?
It is, yeah, it is.
It's got a brilliant song on it called Jimmy's in a Wheelchair and I Don't Care.
Yeah, it's not
Which, if I ever see Jimmy from Pizza Tramp again, once all of this ends, I'm just going to shout at him as much as I possibly can.
It's your new theme tune. So yeah, Devo, I would love to see them this year when they headline, but if I could see them from the early 80s, that would be my absolute dream.
Cool, well, my headliner... there was really only one choice, although again I sort of feel like potentially if Minor Threat or Operation Ivy actually reformed, they would, I don't know, this band proved to be a bit of a draw, is the Misfits, and I would have picked them from probably 1982 because I worked out that was when Doyle would join the band, who's the guitarist, and Robbo, who was the drummer who was in Black Flag as well, was with them, and I really like his style of drumming, which is strange and things is really basic and like
you can be
simplistic.
Picky.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to pick a band who were like my favourite band, it would have to be the Misfits. I think similar to Operation Ivy, I discovered them when I was really young. Had the same sort of feelings about them. I was just Misfits particularly, there was so little information about them. There was literally, and obviously the internet wasn't around to sort of look things up. There was like a handful of pictures of them. I was aware of Danzig before I knew who Misfits were, but I had absolutely no idea that Glenn Danzig was in the Misfits when I first heard them. I didn't put those two things together. Like, that's literally how little I knew about them. And I just think that their songs are all perfect, pretty much, and that's it. I mean, there's not really any more to the story. They were just like my favourite band when I was a teenager growing up, and to see them live, I'm not sure. So they've obviously reformed now, and they've been playing a bunch of really big gigs.
Original lineup.
Original not with the same drummer.
Okay. But
So I mean,
three.
so there's this weird thing about reformations, I think. So I went to see Danzig play in London about maybe, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. And during that tour, Doyle, the guitarist, was coming out and they were doing a set of Misfits songs. So it's Doyle playing the guitar, Danzig singing, and a drummer who was like a really good professional drummer that was just Danzig's drummer. And I think it was Tommy Victor from Prong, that was Danzig's guitarist. He's a really good guitarist. And they played a whole set of Misfits songs. And I can't remember, I think it was at the Roundhouse, possibly, which is a weird venue to see Danzig in. And it was full, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like it was empty, but they definitely didn't sell the place out. Like, there was still space in there. And it's mad to me that if you add a bass player, particularly a bass player who's obviously as unlikable as Jerry Only, that suddenly they would like headline Madison Square Garden. I think possibly 2 nights in a row or something. And it sold out.
Yeah, and then they did it again.
Yeah, it's something about like branding or something. It's just the fact that it's under the Misfits name. But then, of course, there's the other side of that, which is the Misfits that carried on through the 90s and stuff. Who I don't mind. And I saw the Misfits with Michael Graves in 1997, which was just after American Psycho came out. And again, because I knew so little about the Misfits and had no idea about any of this, I didn't really know. I didn't know who I was seeing. So when I turned up, he could have quite easily been the original singer when I saw him. I didn't have a fucking clue.
And you still really enjoyed it.
I had the time of my life.
Aww.
Actually, very quick, interesting story, I think, about the Misfits. I'd been to see I think Ash and my cousin had come. My cousin's the same age as me, but she's not really she wasn't really into alternative music or anything, but she liked Ash for some reason. And so we went to see Ash at the Astoria, and it was a really nice gig, and people bounced up and down a little bit, and then they finished, and it was really nice. And she was like, oh my God, we were 16, I guess. She was like, oh my God, I had the greatest time of my life. Any gig that you're going to next, just tell me what it was. And I was going to see the Misfits at the garage. And so I was like, oh, the Misfits are the greatest band in the world, because they were my favourite band. Yeah. And I had no subtlety or nuance or understanding that other people might not feel that way. So I was like, come to this gig. Come. So she got her mate, and her mate I don't think had ever been to see any live music before in her life. And my brother was coming as well, and we all went to see the Misfits. And when the Misfits started, I ran into the sort of mosh pit thing. And my brother, to this day, still says, I really thought you were dead. Like, it was so, and I do remember it was, I mean, I wouldn't celebrate it now because it was just like stupid boys with their tops off.
Fest.
But my God, it was like mental. And my cousin, who'd never been to a gig or anything really, or had just been to this one gig, was just like, what in the fucking hell is this?
Yeah,
like,
this is not Ash.
What is this? Like, why are people doing this? What is going on? And she never went to a gig again.
Aww.
The next time I knew that she went to see live music, she went to see Kelly Clarkson. And I think she might have gone to see Avril Lavigne after that. So that's where, I'm not having a pop, but, I think I scared her off
of actual music.
Anyway, sorry. That's not really an important story to tell. But yeah, so I would pick the Misfits because they're fucking brilliant.
Nice. Well, that's our music festivals. I guess we were gonna try and mock up some posters to go with this. So you never know, we might put a poster up for our festivals. We might not.
Yeah,
depends how we get on.
I'll probably put a load of videos up on the YouTube playlist, which I keep saying, but just to push it again. We have 10 followers now.
10. Welcome, 10 followers on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I was well impressed by that.
Yeah. A few honourable mentions that didn't make our festivals. I don't have too many. But things I would have mentioned. I had Guar on mine, but Dave's got Guar, so that's fine. Chicks dig it because I saw them once and they never play the UK and they're fucking amazing and I would love to have seen them. I had Operation Ivy on mine. Dead Kennedys.
Yeah, Dead Kennedys on mine
from
too,
late 70s, early 80s. That would have been amazing. Jello Biafra. I just want to cook him a roast dinner. I love him so much. And Iron Sheik, as Dave already mentioned, they're so good live. But we've seen them so many times, so I couldn't put them on this list. I did have the Stooges from really early days because I think they influenced so much. They're so interesting, and Iggy Pop, he might be mental now, but him when he was 20 would have been a thing to see.
With peanut butter.
My other honourable mention does not fit this at all, and I only didn't put them in because they have to be in a very specific place to work, is Sigur Rós. They're not punk in the slightest. They're like this semi-orchestral.
The opposite.
They could be the opposite.
If there's a band that is the opposite of punk.
They're like this almost orchestral, ethereal music that couldn't sound more like it was from Iceland if you tried. The main guy sings like he's a dolphin. I can't really describe it any better than that. Johnsy, he's amazing. They have their own made-up language that they sometimes sing in.
Jesus Christ, enough.
No, and I adore them. I saw them at Latitude. Yes, forgive me for my uncoolness. No, but side note, Latitude hadn't been going very long. It was in Suffolk. It was the closest to a music festival near my town. The rest of it was shit, but Sigur Rós at night with these big light up orbs playing to God knows who. I didn't care. I didn't see.
Were they selling craft cheese?
I couldn't see who else was there because I was busy crying my eyes out listening to Sigur Rós. I thought they were amazing. They are amazing, but they don't fit in my head in my festival, so they didn't make it. So they're my honourable mentions, Dave.
Cool. Just very quickly, I would have gone Sham 69. The reason that I didn't was because their audience would be a bunch of knobs.
Yeah.
I would have gone Capone, like I mentioned, but Mike Bishop was already in Guar. I would have gone Dillinger 4, I considered, but we've seen him a couple of times, or we've seen him once, and I think I've seen him a couple of times. So I just thought, I could probably see them again. Texas is the reason. They were, so I don't mention it very much, but during the sort of late 90s, early noughties, I was really into that kind of original emo type stuff. And most of it hasn't aged very well, but I think that Texas is the Reason album is fucking brilliant. I did see them when they reformed and they were alright. And the Screamers, the original LA punk band, they're a band who I got into relatively recently. I'd sort of heard bits of, but I managed to get a bootleg of. They never actually recorded anything, the Screamers, famously, but there's a few live videos and there is a demo which I got of. And they're fucking brilliant. And I imagine live they would have been another band that would have just been unlike anything else ever. And Tool. Tool were very much going to be on there, but I would have had them playing in 1996, which was when their album Anima came out. But I actually saw Tool in 1996 at the Astoria, so I thought I can leave that one off 'cause I've done it. And the only other one, which isn't a band, is I might have had the Jim Rose Circus Sideshow on there, which potentially no one knows what that is, but it's literally a circus sideshow that was around in the kind of late 80s through till I think it might still be going actually, but they used to do a lot of opening slots before bands, and it was like people hanging breeze blocks off their nipples and banging nails into their nose and stuff. And again, it was just one of those things that I just, at the time, it blew my mind that it existed, and I would just like to have seen it.
Yeah. Well, delicious. Okay, well that's been a long old babble, but I hope that there was some things for you to go and have a look at. Again, we'll put all this stuff on YouTube. So let's play a song. This song is from a band called Incisions. They are from Manchester. They're on TNS Records, and this song is called First Impressions. It's from their forthcoming album Bliss, and that's coming out on Friday, the 2nd of April.
Is that Friday? The day after we post this podcast.
If you're listening to it, it might actually have already come out, depending on when you listen to our podcast. They're playing Hastings this year on the 26th of November with Haste and Bruise Control.
And a couple of other bands, I think.
And there'll be and a few other bands. And there's also going to be a Kiss covers band playing around that time as well. So just come to Hastings and have a really good weekend.
So on the so there's a Kiss tribute band called Snog. Their bass player, whilst dressed as Gene Simmons, looks like Christopher Biggins. and they all look a bit like it's going to be an interesting. They're playing at the biker bar down here, which is called the Carlisle. It's going to be crazy. So we're all obviously going to go, and somewhere along the line, someone from Incisions noticed that we were all going to go and see Snog, and they decided they wanted to come too. It's on a Saturday, so we decided we'd just book a punk show, that like a pre-show to Snog.
Oh, is that why this gig exists?
Yeah,
Jesus
that's literally
Christ.
the only reason. So we've so far, we've booked. So Haste the Plan, we've booked Bruise Control. I don't know whether they specifically want to play because they want to come and see Snog. I'm guessing. I'm going to take it that that's the reason. And Incision. So we're all going to just go on a bender for a weekend in Hastings.
Nice.
So if there was ever a weekend to come down here,
come then.
Come
as well
then.
as What's It Called Fest.
As well as
if
What's It
you're
Called
already
Fest,
able to
but-
come.
yeah, it's going to be just come for the whole weekend. Come with us to see Snog. I don't think they're going to know what's hitting when just loads of punks walk in.
Yeah.
And the Carlisle's a very interesting place. So
Not known for being super liberal. Cool. Well, that was a long old introduction to Incisions. So this is their song, First Impressions. Pictures up.
Rolling.
Rolling.
It's the trash. It's the sweet, sweet trash.
Avoid fainting. Keep repeating.
I love what I see.
Leave the auditorium. It is only a movie.
This week's trashy film for review is Mission of Justice from 1992.
You have the right to remain silent.
He's a cop, out of options.
Crazy son of a bitch, you're out of here.
Out of uniform, and out of control.
We're supposed to stop the bad guys, not process them. Now we've been hated by the same people we're supposed to protect.
Now he's a one-man wrecking machine on a mission of justice.
Let it begin.
From the executive producer of Internal Affairs and the producer of Deep Cover comes the hottest stars of martial arts. Jeff Wincott of Martial Law 2 Undercover in the series Night Heat. Erin Shepard, two-time women's black belt kata champion. Matthias Hughes of Star Trek 6, Kickboxer 2, Talons of the Eagle, and Black Belt. And Brigitte Nielsen of Beverly Hills Cop 2, Rocky 4, and Cobra. Mission of Justice.
So, Mission of Justice. Kurt Harris, a bitter ex-cop, goes undercover in The Peacemakers after his friend is killed by their leader. Whilst there, he discovers that the woman wants to run for mayor. The woman being the woman who runs it.
The woman who runs
yeah.
the... Yeah.
This is a very terrible description. The woman who runs The Peacemakers wants to run for mayor and will do anything to achieve this goal, even murder. So just to say, the woman that they're referring to is Brigitte Nielsen, and the main guy, Kurt Harris, is played by Jeff Wincott. Don't worry if you've never heard of him. I'd never heard of him either.
Well, I was just getting ready to really rip him a new arsehole.
Oh.
And I think he's dead, so now I feel a bit bad.
Oh, well, it doesn't mean that he's any better in
So let's
this
pretend
film.
I didn't find out that he was dead, and then we can say what we were going to say.
But Lucy, just to give a tiny bit more of the storyline, So there's this bitter ex-cop. He's bitter because he doesn't feel the police do justice.
Yeah.
He ends up leaving them because of some incident that happens, and he sees these peacemakers who are like these vigilante justice people out on the street, and thinks, I'll go join them. But, like mentioned in that poor description, one of his friends is killed by the peacemakers or the Mission of Justice, who are the group that run the peacemakers.
Yeah.
And so he wants to infiltrate this group to find out what happened.
That's not entirely clear. I mean, it could be that...
nothing's very clear.
Yeah.
There's a little bit tied between he doesn't feel that there's any justice being served by the police and the peacemakers do better versions of it. However, the peacemakers are also run by this group who killed his mate. So he wants to kind of be in a group that serves justice and also find out what happened.
The best thing about it is that you find that out by somebody holding a newspaper up and saying, look at this, and it just says, cop quits and joins vigilantes on the front page of a newspaper.
The day he did it.
Like the day he did it, yeah. So that's the kind of level
That's
of...
where this film's at. So Dave, what did you think of Mission of Justice?
Well, so we actually own this film.
Yeah,
we should
from a charity
have
shop.
mentioned. We bought it from a charity shop a while ago. We watched it I reckon a Sunday afternoon, and I'm guessing we were hungover, but I'm not sure. But I actually remember thinking it was just right for what it was.
It was good enough not to give back to the charity shop.
Yeah, we thought we might want to watch it again, so we kept it. So we thought, all right, we'll watch it for this. And on second view, I didn't remember it at all. I didn't remember almost anything about it whatsoever. And so I don't know why, obviously didn't stick in my head. I might have dropped off or something when we watched it the first time and just convinced myself it was good. But, I mean, it's a piece of shit. It's not entirely... There's enjoyable things about it, but it is an absolute piece of shit. I don't really know anything about kung fu films, of which this isn't exactly one, but it kind of is. And you probably heard on the introduction bit that we played from the trailer that all of the people are in it are kind of, they're all in, I can't remember any of their names, but like one of them's from Death Wish 3, and one of them was a champion jiu-jitsu fighter, and one of them was from Rocky 4 or something.
Yeah.
And so it's very much like a C-level group of people making a movie.
Yeah.
Let me think. What did I like about it? They wear beautiful outfits for the most part. It's a lot of like triple XL suits on muscly people. Lots of turtlenecks under suit jackets. When they wear jeans, they tuck their t-shirts in and they really
wear the jeans.
They really pull those jeans.
Yeah.
The main guy obviously thinks extremely highly of himself. I can't. Not that this isn't. I'm not body shaming him, and this isn't necessarily important. But he appears to be about 3 foot shorter than everybody else in this movie. So, including Bridget Nielsen.
Who's a tall lady.
Who is a tall lady, but she also wears high heels and stuff.
Yeah.
So there might be an element of kind of people wearing higher shoes than him. But I think he's quite a petite man. But he's got very big muscles. He's very proud of his muscles.
Well, may I just say that I've written... there's an alternative title for this film.
Oh, is it Muscles?
It's called so it's Mission of Justice, or I may be short, but have you seen how good I can kick? P.S. Check out my muscles.
Yeah, that's basically true. He can. I mean, he obviously can do a bit of martial arts and stuff. He's not an actor. He doesn't really act.
I don't think he acts at any point.
No. The main. Apart from Bridget Nielsen, the main female lead, Karen Shepherd, who's kind of his partner on the force and then kind of just helps him out generally as they go on. She, according to the intro thing, is like a black belt in jiu-jitsu or something. But for some reason, she doesn't really do that much karate. She mostly just does... her role is much more of like an acting role, which is very strange because she can't act.
She does the most acting. She does the most successful acting in it.
Yeah.
And she's not even an actress. But
well, I mean, she must have had a bit of... I mean, I don't know. I suppose all of these people... Because I mean, I feel like there's that guy Matthias Hughes, who is the...
He's like a baddie.
He's the baddie in it. But he's definitely one of these guys who pops up in loads of these films. He must be in a Jean-Claude Van Damme film. He's got a really... he's very striking looking.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe him.
I think that's polite.
He looks very Nordic. Well, no, I mean, it's not that he's ugly or anything or funny looking, but he's got a very striking look.
He's got an
about
80s
him.
villain's face.
He has.
Like a Bond villain.
And I feel like he is a villain in a lot of these things. I feel like everybody, and partly it's because of poor acting, but partly it's because of like the humanity behind the acting.
Yeah.
Nobody seems like they're real people. And I don't mean the characters, I mean the actors. They don't appear to be real to me. They're kind of they all, I don't know, like there's something. It's like if somebody walks in this movie, it's like they're pretending to walk. Like like they've never walked before. That's the sort of level of their acting skills. It's like they're having to put so much effort into every movement that they do, apart from the kicks. And he's pretty good at lifting up weights.
Yeah, he does a lot of that, doesn't he?
He takes his top off so much, sometimes for no reason whatsoever. He'll just be...
Well, he's upset at one point, so it comes off.
So it comes off.
Yeah.
And he's showing their muscles off.
Yeah.
My only other real thought about this film, which is something that I kind of... is more... I don't know if I like it necessarily, but it's quite an interesting thing that I find about these sorts of films, is that... So this is made in 1992. There is absolutely zero irony or... like tongue-in-cheekness to this film whatsoever. Despite the fact that it's absolutely ridiculous,
they really think
everybody in it, like, it's 100%. They're making it 100% seriously, and I feel like that's something that just doesn't exist anymore. And I think it's probably a generational thing to some extent. I think that people who are the age of, who would be making films now, they've all got automatically loads of irony in them, and that you couldn't make a film like this and try and be serious anymore. But it's quite incredible that they managed to be this unironic, and I suppose it's how films like The Room get made.
Yeah,
because it's when somebody really is completely incapable of making a movie, but takes it 100% seriously. That's quite interesting to me. I feel like there's something quite nice about that, in a way that, like, if I was going to make a really bad film, I would automatically I think it's a generational thing. I would automatically have an element of laughing at myself involved in it. And definitely a film like this, if it was made in 2020 or 2021, it would all be tongue in cheek. It would be even if they were sort of superficially taking it seriously, they'd be taking it seriously in that kind of Alan Partridge way of laughing at the fact that they're taking it seriously. And I just find there's something interesting about that. And I think there's something about culture. There's something about a difference. It's probably something like, I suppose in 1992, these people were probably all Generation X. So they probably had a completely different look, outlook to sort of bloody millennials. Or they might have been boomers, actually, come to think of it. Some of them probably were. But yeah, I don't know. I just think about this shit too much. So. There's one line in it that I really liked, where, just a completely random bit, where... someone knocks on the door of a baddie's grotto, and the guy turns to his little helper and he says, "Get the door and don't be a moron this time." It was completely out of context. It was just like, I don't know if something had been cut or what, but I really liked that. That was really good.
Aww.
But generally speaking, I mean, everybody in this is very dislikable.
Yeah.
None of them can act. The kung fu is obviously the reason why people go and see this film. I guess, isn't it? And I don't know if people go and watch films like this for kung fu. Like, I really don't know if any films are being made. The straight up kung fu films without any effort on story or character or plot, do they even exist anymore?
God knows. I really don't know.
But yeah, this isn't really my cup of tea. There was something about it that I didn't hate, but I think I should have.
Should have hated it.
Should have hated it, and sort of did a little.
I thought that it was pretty shit, but I really just found myself not having any trouble watching it. I think it was a wonderful mix of overacting at times, but mostly completely underacting or absence of acting. Some of my favourite bits was they have a woman who plays the role of a nurse, and then of a data analyst, and then of a God knows what. And who cannot act for shit.
She looks like she's straight out of Baywatch as well, which again, I'm not having a pop at her for. But...
Well, her casting call, her agent must have been delivered something that said, "Busty, breathy woman with coiffed hair must be able to wear a big suit and do one high kick."
But also, like, to play the role of doctor.
If you want to say so, it doesn't matter how she says the lines.
Yeah.
Like, so credit to her, she's just a pretty girl with massive hair who does absolutely nothing apart from say her lines really badly. But in fairness, she's not exactly shown up by any other person.
Yeah, she's just as good as everyone else.
Bridget Nielsen is quite terrible. I think they've picked Bridget Nielsen purely because she had this slick 90s lesbian supermodel hair that I think they considered it looked evil, which is awful.
Well,
but
she probably would have
definitely
had a name value to some extent. 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't know, because she was married to Sly Stallone.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit like she probably, in comparison to everyone else in this film,
she's the only name.
she's
in
the
film.
only the one that I recognise the
Yeah.
name of, and that's probably true.
So
at the
she's
time.
probably the pull. And for a second, I thought, God, she is a good baddie in this. But then they allow her to talk too much, and turns out she can't act either. I think the main guy, what's his name, Jeff Wincott. I think he's very proud of his muscles. He's obviously doesn't get cast in anything, and it's a shame. It's probably his height mixed with the fact that he can't act. But this is a man that doesn't exactly turn up in many other films, and he spends a lot of time kicking, and he's very good at that.
Oh, for the record, he's not dead.
But that's it. Okay, good.
Sorry, so you can go at it.
Good. Well, what films have you been in, Jeff Wincott? You've probably been in loads.
No, I was going to say he has actually been in some other films, I think.
I bet probably all kicking. Because again,
All kicking.
Good
All
at kicking is where I really want to go with this. Lots of sweat, lots of muscles. There's a peacemaker rites of passage that happens way earlier in the film than I remember. Because I thought that was like the climactic point of the film when I tried to remember what this was about. But it's not, and it's just how he gets initiated into the peacemakers by he has to do a gauntlet of fighting off about 20 other people with sticks, basically. And that's all over. Actually, that takes a really long time. It's just
all of the
kicking.
fight. Well, all of the fight, because that's the thing, isn't it? If people are there for the fights, I suppose it makes sense. But all of the fights go on for fucking ages.
Yeah,
it's just constant kicking.
But then that's I've never really watched kung fu movies, and this is definitely not a good version of it. But I think there is meant to be a lot of fighting. Anyway, there's a lot of fighting. A lot of it's flawed. Like a lot of it is really flawed. The end scene, I won't spoil it, but there's some major flaws as to how that goes down.
Someone forgets that they're holding a knife.
Well, someone's holding two knives, and one hand is restrained, the other hand is free with a knife, and yet they're not stabbing the person who's getting them, and then they just succumb to it, and then it's over. What? You should have. Why are you not stabbing with your free hand? Anyway. And then the end, like, there's one little storyline to this that I think is quite interesting, but it completely screws it at the end, where he leaves the police because he doesn't feel the police deliver real justice. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But spoiler alert, that doesn't really come to anything.
I think as well that
So the one little, like, moral, interesting thing comes to nothing.
That, not to over-politicise it, but that kind of storyline doesn't really sit very well in modern times. It's a little bit like, what was that fucking, like 24, that Kiefer Sutherland thing, where like the police are so frustrated because they can't beat up the baddies, so they're going to go and beat up the baddies. It's like that doesn't really, that's particularly in the current climate, that's not really something to you don't get behind a police officer because they can't do enough damage to someone anymore. Whereas I figure in the 90s, that was kind of a thing. It was like everyone was like, yeah, you know, these baddies, they're getting away with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. But I think they didn't really necessarily do it from... They did it from a corrupt kind of... corrupt police side. And he was like... He saw that... He brought in... Basically, right at the beginning, he brings in a guy who's been beating up his wife. But because he's a snitch, they let him go. And then he goes and kills his wife. And that's why he leaves. He says, you do not deliver justice because you've just let go a man because he's helpful to you. And that's corrupt. So I thought that was quite good. But anyway... Yeah. That all falls to shit at the end. So Mission of Justice...
Can I just say there was something else that occurred to me that I forgot to mention. Going back to that kind of non-ironic or ironic thing, is that, and I said this to you at the time, he's a little bit like Michael Scott from The American Office. Like if he had loads of muscles. He's really similar to that character. Yeah, obviously he's not. Obviously, it's in a completely different light. One of them is a comedic character that you're supposed to laugh at, and one of them is supposed to be the hero of this film.
Yeah,
and he really is kind of similar to that. Also, one other thing: the soundtrack is all either really sexy guitar.
Oh yeah, I've said that.
Or really sad guitar. Piano. And sometimes it doesn't make sense where they put those two things in. It's just like suddenly someone's crying and there's sexy guitar, and it's like they're having a fight and there's some sad piano.
Yeah,
it doesn't
makes
really
no sense.
So just one thing about Jeffrey Wincott, as I said, alive, Canadian actor and martial artist.
Oh, he's Canadian.
He between 1981 and 1983 he taught breakdancing, and he would also perform as a mime on Venice Beach.
Oh.
For money, it says on his Wikipedia page.
How much
very
money?
Importantly, not very much, probably.
Oh, bless him. Well,
so what are you going to give it as a score out of 10? Not that
Do you
these
know what?
scores mean anything
what
anymore.
watchable on a hangover? Not as good as I remember it, but still not the worst one I've ever seen. 4.
Oh, all right.
4
It's
out of
quite high.
10. Yeah.
I would say
Because depressingly, I will watch that again one day in my life. I think
he's going in the bin, so you're not watching it.
it's on YouTube. We're going to put it.
Oh,
up,
it is.
so-
Oh, it is on YouTube actually.
So,
So, if
sorry,
you, do,
you
yeah,
are
if you
able
want
to
watch
watch it. Yeah, I'd go 3 or 4. I like the kicking.
I think if I was hungover and it was a Sunday afternoon, I'd give it a 3. If I wasn't, I'd give it a 1.
1 out of 10. Fuck. Well, Mission of Justice. Again, we're going to put it on YouTube. Well, it is on YouTube. We'll put it on our playlist so you can decide for yourself. Is it worth your time? Yeah, you decide.
Waste your time and then you'll know. Okay, let's move on to an old song. This one is by a band called Schema. I don't have a great deal to tell you about Schema because I don't really know, but they have they had a bunch of vinyl releases, I think, during the sort of mid 90s, and then all of their stuff was released on a CD by Armed with Anger Records, who tended to put out really heavy stuff. They put out some Voorhees albums and records, and I think they put out some Stalingrad records. So it was more like real heavy hardcore stuff. This is very much in keeping, going back to what I mentioned earlier, but more like a sort of late 90s emo, original emo thing. A little bit of Fugazi in there. It's kind of noisy. It's kind of interesting. I used to just really love this band. Like I said, I don't know much about them. I know that some of them went on to be in a band called Carver, who were around, probably around about the millennium-ish, I guess. And they released a couple of EPs that were pretty good. But yeah, I just really like this band. The song is called Corridors. Like I say, it's from a CD called Sooner Than You Think, but I think it had come out on vinyl before this CD came out, and I hope you like it.
Welcome back to Breakfast Punx podcast, and thanks for listening to episode 7. I hope that you've enjoyed it. We're going to put lots and lots of stuff on our YouTube playlist to kind of go along with a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, a lot of the bands in our festival lineups, and of course the wonderful Mission of Justice will be there for you to view. Again, if you've got any feedback, anything you want us to mention, or anything that you want us to know in general, message us. Best way is probably shamcityroasters at gmail.com if you want to email, or contact us on Instagram via Breakfast Punx podcast page.
Follow our YouTube channel.
Yes, thank you to the
Breakfast
10
Punx podcast.
Thanks to our 10 subscribers.
Yeah. And I guess if you can follow us on any of your podcast apps of choice, do that as well.
Yeah, why not?
I don't really know if you can.
Who knows? We still don't know.
You can follow us on Spotify. I forgot the fucking name of it. You can follow us on Spotify, I guess.
Can you?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think so.
can.
And then it will tell you if we've got a new episode.
There you go. Do that, guys.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time, by which point I think we might all be sort of allowed to go out of the house a little bit. Who knows?
Yeah, I think I can't work it out, but it won't be long.
I think we can go to someone's garden in a couple of days.
I think we can go, as of yesterday.
Oh, there you go. I don't know why we're not there now.
There you go.
We're going to leave you with a last song by a band called Bratakus, who are from the north of Scotland. This song is called The Curse of Blood. It's from their EP Ghoul Gang that was released in October last year. But it's actually coming out on a compilation I wanted to tell you about, which is called Reclaim the Night, and it's coming out on a new label called Inner Magic Records. All of the proceeds are going to be going to the Refuge charity. There's some really, really good bands on there. Knife Club are on there, who we played. Brazen Hussy are on there, who we've played. Like I say, Bratakus are going to be on there with this song. Riviera Kid, Werecats, who do we don't mention this enough really, Werecats do our theme music, if you like. The Sewer Cats, who we've played. Just loads of really good bands. Haste are on there. I don't know who they are.
Nah, screw 'em.
And that's coming out, I think will be out by the time this podcast comes out, so definitely go and support that. It will be on Bandcamp. And Bratakus actually have a new single also coming out on the 2nd of April, which is called Real Men Eat Meat, and it's coming out via their Bandcamp. So yeah, we're going to leave you with Bratakus with their song The Curse of Blood. Thanks a lot for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
sorry, Cassie. We're all sorry, Cassie.
Trust me, Carrie. You can trust me.